at number 10, dog experiments. A few years back, PETA released a scathing expose on the Texas A&M University's laboratories. What was branded as a breeding program turns out to have been closer to a cruel experiment under the guise of science. It turns out that they had been actively lying about their dog breeding program and were actually using the dogs for cruel and painful experiments. Dogs under their care were deliberately bred to develop a crippling form of canine muscular dystrophy that prevented most of the dogs from walking, eating properly, or having any kind of quality of life. From there, they would use the dogs in experiments involving biopsies and these devices that stretched their muscle tissue, causing them not only incredible pain during the procedures, but ultimately forcing many of the dogs to be euthanized due to the toll it put on their bodies. Apparently, the university had been doing these kinds of experiments for nearly 40 years before PETA was able to put an end to it, and thankfully all of the dogs have now been rescued and are being sent to new homes. Next up at number 9, hepatitis. In the 1950s, one institution ran a very dark experiment that I honestly can't quite believe was able to happen even that long ago. The institution was for disabled people, specifically those deemed to have mental illnesses or mental disorders at that time. And due to the highly unsanitary conditions of this institution, many contracted hepatitis. You would think that this would maybe make them go, oh, maybe we should tidy up around here, protect those that are under our care, but that was not really their approach. Instead, Dr. Saul Krugman proposed an experiment to try and develop a vaccine. Now, while I can appreciate the thought that was behind his proposition, rather than testing on the already contracted citizens, they actually began purposefully infecting people with the disease to assist in the experiment. Now, don't get it twisted, there were many folks against this from the start, but ultimately parents of the admitted people gave their permission to infect them and use them in the study, so forth they went. It's kind of crazy to believe that someone would actually go along with that, but apparently they didn't seem to care too much about infecting disabled people with a deadly disease, so there you have it. Coming in at number 8, Project Artichoke. In the 1950s, the CIA ran a series of mind control projects called Project Artichoke, and their goal was simple, but definitely unethical. The primary goal was to see if a person could involuntarily be made to attempt an act of assassination. So essentially they were trying to see if they could mind control someone into killing another person. At first they went about trying to gain mind control by studying the test subjects via hypnosis and total isolation as a means to break down the subjects. But soon they realized something was missing. In came forced morphine addictions along with a slew of other drugs, followed by forced withdrawal. They would also use chemicals to incite amnesia on the human subjects, and those that got out were left incredibly foggy and traumatized with little to no recollection of what they had been through. The study was shut down by the 1960s, likely due to the fact that they were traumatizing and forcing addiction on unsuspecting innocent civilians, but it did open the door for more research around the possibility of mind control, so you never know, maybe someday it might just be possible. Next up at number 7, the two-headed dog. In 1959, Vladimir Demikov had a truly evil vision. His experiments were among some of the first organ and tissue transplant research, which ultimately some have argued is obviously very valuable information, but his methods were certainly unethical and definitely controversial. He started out transplanting organs by sewing them onto the outside of animals, but ultimately gained his notoriety for creating a two-headed dog. To make his Frankenstein dog, he removed the head and front legs of a small dog from the rest of its body and then transplanted it onto a larger host dog. The dogs actually lived for 4 days after the experiment, declaring it seemingly successful, and they were able to see and look around during that time. So all in all, while it did help chart the course of modern transplants, it was certainly viewed as a very controversial study. Next up at number 6, the Milgram experiment. Named after the psychologist Stanley Milgram, who spearheaded the experiment, this study began in the summer of 1961, and it looked at testing the limits of obedience. Many academics at the time wanted to take a look into what was at the core of an authoritative personality, and how someone could be swayed to commit something that ultimately they didn't want to do simply because they believed they had to. A newspaper advertisement was sent out, but the details were not provided until test subjects arrived. Once the study began, the two groups were separated. One group was assigned to be an actor and the other group was tasked with shocking the person in the room after they answered a question wrong. What group 2 didn't know was that group 1 was not actually being shocked, just acting as if they were. And as it turns out, an incredibly high proportion of the subjects continued to shock the group despite thinking they were hurting them, simply because they felt they had no other choice. And later, another scientist thought the experiment needed to be amped up, as he hypothesized people could have felt the victim was faking it. The new study included real-life dogs as the subjects, being shocked, and test subjects apparently openly wept while still following orders to shock the dogs, apparently proving that many humans will follow orders to a fault. Coming in at number 5, radiation. After World War II, there were many questions surrounding radioactive materials and the effects these could have on humans moving forward. Well, apparently they decided the best people to test out this incredibly harmful and dangerous study on would of course be pregnant women. Medical researchers fed radioactive edibles in the form of energy drinks to 829 pregnant women, and not only didn't they tell them what they were giving them, but they straight up lied and said that it would actually improve the health of their babies. Many of the women in the study became incredibly ill, would get covered in rashes and bruises, and some ultimately ended up developing cancer. But worst of all is that many of the fetuses were in fact born with leukemia or other forms of cancer, and the mothers didn't even know that they had been involved in an experiment in the first place. That was until it was much too late. Coming in at number 4, the syphilis study. Back in 1932, the United States Public Health Service began to dive into the natural progression of syphilis if left untreated. And listen, I understand that these kinds of experiments provide us with knowledge of how to help protect people in the future, but what I'm saying is that there are better ways to go about it. In this study, 600 poor and illiterate men, of which only 399 previously had syphilis, were hired, and none of them were told about what the experiment was going to be for, or that they had a life-threatening disease in the first place. The 600 men were instead told that they were actually receiving free healthcare, meals, and burial insurance in exchange for their participation. What's even more sick is that even though penicillin was proven to be an effective cure in 1947, the study continued all the way until 1972, essentially needlessly infecting hundreds of people and watching them die of a disease that already had a cure. I mean, it's just insane that this went on for so long, and it's definitely one of the most evil experiments to have seen the light of day. Coming in at number 3, eugenics. Prior to World War II, there was actually many places around the United States that were pro-eugenics. Of course, this all changed after the infamous evil experiments performed in the war, but rewind to 1907 and it was actually widely accepted across the nation. Firstly, sterilization was enacted as a hypothesis to help reduce crime rates and stop mental disabilities. And then not long after, they began to bring race in as a factor in the hopes to improve genetic stock through the sterilization of unpreferred races. Because it is women who give birth, they were often the victims of these experiments, as eugenicists believed it was the best way to protect and regulate birth rates and weed out who they didn't want to be able to reproduce. Although it was first overturned in 1921, by 1927 the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of forced sterilization, believing it would create a better society for us all to live in. I mean, it's truly horrid that this was not only legal, but encouraged by so many. Coming in at number 2, a cure for insanity. 1907 seems to have been a busy year for evil scientists, but rather than eugenics, this doctor believed he could actually cure insanity. Dr. Henry Cotton was convinced that internal organs, upon developing an infection, were the root cause of mental disorders. So Cotton got involved with the asylum and got to researching on what he refers to as patients, but really were victims of his cruel experiments. He believed that by removing the infected organ, he could not only cure his patients of their disorders, but then study that organ for further research. And that's all well and fine if you're dealing with maybe a root canal, but when it comes to vital organs, it's not the same story. Dubbed surgical bacteriology, the procedures were often done without the patient's consent, and he would remove teeth, tonsils, and even colons and other organs of the like. To further prove his point, he even removed his own teeth along with his wife and sons too, which, I mean, if he was trying to prove a point, does that mean he thought he was insane? Because why else would he remove his teeth? But in the end, 49 of his patients died, which he chalked up to end-stage psychosis, and to this day the project is viewed as incredibly cruel. Last up in our #1 spot, the Aversion Project. Led by Dr. Aubrey Levin, this program identified homosexual soldiers from the army and subjected them to horrific medical tortures as a means to try and change their sexual orientation. Now, at the time, it was believed that being gay was a disease that could be and should be cured, and so the experiment to convert soldiers began. The experiment lasted between 1971 to 1989, and the soldiers were submitted to extensive electric shock treatment while being forced to view explicit images of the same sex, trying to cause their brain to make negative associations with homosexuality. When the subjects didn't change, or at least didn't admit to changing their sexual orientation, they would force the victims into sex-changing operations, making them effectively straight women in their eyes. Reportedly 900 gay men between 16 to 24 were surgically changed into women against their will, and once the experiment was shut down, Levin fled to Canada and denied ever being a part of the cruel and evil experiment.
Starting off this list, in our #10 spot we have Margaret Lorraine Smith. Starting off this list with one of the craziest stories on it, Margaret is quite a dangerous woman. She actually is charged with hiring a man to kill her own husband, George Smith. On August 6, 2007, it is said that she hired a man and lured her husband to Surfside Beach late at night. She left George sitting in the sand as the man she hired carried out her evil, horrible plan. Both Margaret and the man she hired were both indicted on these charges in September of 2007. While the hired man was convicted, Margaret herself has been running from her own actions since August 11, 2009. She fled while on bond awaiting the start of her trial. We could ask ourselves all day why she was allowed to be released on bond for such a horrific crime, but at the end of the day it won't help anyone find her. She was last seen on video at a Walmart in San Antonio getting into a maroon 4-door sedan. There are many rewards being offered for anyone who can provide tips that lead to her arrest, and authorities have also released age-progressed photos to show what she may look like now. Hopefully at some point she is caught and brought to justice for the horrible thing that she did. In our #9 spot today we have Israel Aguirre. Israel was first arrested in 2002 on the charges of theft as well as being charged for taking someone's life. He was convicted of his theft charge in 2003 and served times at a corrections facility for it. After his sentence was finished, he was deported from the United States before standing trial for the charge related to the killing. In 2005, however, he was arrested once again in Dallas, this time for a different crime as well as for failure to identify himself. He pled no contest and was released on bond. He made a few different court appearances between 2005 and 2007, but eventually he disappeared. On September 9, 2007, the Kaufman County Sheriff's Office issued a warrant for his arrest for the killing, but he is yet to be seen. In our #8 spot today we have Troy James Allison. Born in Houston, Texas in 1953, Troy has quite a criminal history, including convictions in 1973 and 1976 for some very serious crimes. In 1977 he was convicted of a horrifying crime following an incident involving a 22-year-old female. For this he received a 75-year sentence which he served up until he was paroled in 2003. Since 2004, however, he has been on the run. He was last seen in the Lufkin area but is still wanted for his parole violation as well as failing to comply with orders to register as a sex offender. The Most Wanted website lists his past employment history, as he's had jobs as a pipe fitter, welder, and a meat cutter. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Phantom Killer. This is the moniker used to refer to an unidentified serial killer who was active in the spring of 1946. During this time in Texarkana, Texas, whoever this suspect is killed 5 people and injured 3 others over the course of 10 weeks. Many people call this series of crimes the Texarkana Moonlight Killings, and despite best efforts, no one has been able to solve the crimes. Basically, the MO of these incidents involved young couples who had parked their cars on the secluded Lover's Lane at night, and they were the primary targets. The first couple who encountered this monster thankfully survived their attack, and they were able to provide a description which involved the assailant wearing a white sack over his head with holes cut out for the eyes. From all of the urban legends, true crime stories, and just general spooky stories that I've heard, which involves people parking on Lover's Lane, I think it's officially convinced me to never go anywhere near any such kind of place. Because of the time it's been, it's possible that whoever is responsible for these crimes will never be caught. In our number 6 spot today, we have Susan O'Connor. About a month and a half ago, a woman was arrested, and it was found out that she had been on the run for years. 54-year-old Susan O'Connor was pulled over on October 28th for speeding, but what the officers found was more than they likely could have ever imagined. As it turned out, Susan was on the run since 2009 when she fled with her then 3-year-old son. Her fingerprints confirmed her true identity, and she was charged. For 14 years, Susan's son was listed as a missing person, but with Susan being found, the now 17-year-old was finally reunited with his father. It appears as though the reason Susan fled in the first place was to disrupt and interfere with some sort of custody issue that she was having at the time. Susan is now being held at the Collin County Detention Facility in McKinney on warrants for failure to appear and interference with child custody. Her bond has been set at $100,000, and if convicted, she likely will face time in prison. In our number 5 spot today, we have Jose Fernando Bustos Diaz. Back in 2005, Jose was working on a ranch as a hand at the Oaks of Kendallwood stables, which were located in northwest Harris County. As he worked here, he made the terrible decision to take someone's life. He pleaded guilty to the crime once caught and received a 35-year sentence for it. On April 6, 2010, however, this story spun even more out of control when he escaped from his prison unit approximately 70 miles southwest of San Antonio. On that day, the sheriff's office and the jail both issued warrants for his arrest regarding the escape, and on April 13th, the U.S. Marshals Service issued another one pertaining to unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Many people believe that he may have managed to flee the country entirely, but at this point, anyone's guess could possibly be correct. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Servant Girl Annihilator. This horrible name refers to one of America's first known serial killers who was responsible for taking the lives of 7 women and 1 man in Austin, Texas between December of 1884 and December of 1885. All of the victims in this case were members of staff who had either been killed as they slept or dragged out of their beds and killed outside of their homes. There was even one night on December 24th, 1885 where this person took 3 lives in one night. That is horrifying. There have been many people questioned, arrested, and even one likely suspect, but considering the many years it's been, it's safe to say that the one responsible will likely never be found. In our number 3 spot today, we have Brandon Hogan. Brandon has landed himself a spot on the Texas 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list, the most amazing top 10 most wanted fugitives list. He is said to have ties to Coryell County, which includes both the cities of McGregor as well as Gatesville, Texas. The reason he is on the most wanted list is because in 2007 he was convicted of harming someone and it caused bodily injury, and because of this he received 5 years probation. His probation, however, didn't last long. It was actually revoked the following year, and he was instead sentenced to 5 years confinement. In August of this year, however, Brandon was arrested for theft of firearm, burglary of a habitation, assault, and criminal mischief. On September 26, 2002, he escaped from his work crew station and since then has been on the run. In our number 2 spot today we have Matthew Edgar. Born in 1996, although young, Matthew has quite the history when it comes to run-ins with the law. In 2015, Matthew was convicted of evading arrest as well as causing serious bodily injury, and as a result of this he was sentenced to 3 years of confinement and 3 years of probation. In 2020, things took a way darker turn, however, when he was arrested for taking someone's life. In 2021, he was subsequently arrested for harming a family/household member, which appears to have been by way of impeding their ability to breathe. Earlier this year in January, he was attending his initial days of the trial that was in relation to him taking someone's life before he fled on January 26, 2022. He did end up being convicted in absentia and has been sentenced to 99 years confinement. On January 27, 2022, just a day after he fled, a warrant was issued for his arrest, and hopefully he soon is found so that he can serve the sentence he received from the judge. In our number 1 spot today we have Patrick Carrier. 3 of the Texas 10 most wanted fugitives quite recently were finally found and brought back into custody, and Patrick is just one of them. After fleeing, Patrick was finally caught and was arrested in Houston on November 21st. He initially was in trouble in 1993 when he was convicted of a killing and received a 45-year sentence for that crime. In 2013, he was convicted again for possession of an illicit substance and was sentenced to 6 months confinement, but was released on parole in October of 2020. This turned out to be a mistake, however, as he totally disappeared, completely violating the terms of his parole, and with a violent history that is a major cause for concern. At the beginning of 2021, in January, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles issued a warrant for his arrest for a parole violation, and then in March, just a few months later, the Harris County Sheriff's Office issued a warrant for his arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Thankfully, this is one person on this list who was found so that they can finish serving the sentence that they were given.
In the vast, untamed wilderness of Texas, whispers of a fearsome creature known as the Wampus Cat have echoed through the ages. Countless locals hailing from remote towns and ranches claim to have encountered this enigmatic cryptid, leaving an indelible mark on the region's folklore. Descriptions of the Wampus Cat vary, but a common thread weaves throughout. It's a creature with the body of a monstrous feline, possessing sleek black fur that glistens under the moonlight. Its piercing, glowing eyes pierce through the darkness, striking fear into the hearts of those who dare to gaze upon it. As diverse as the Lone Star State itself, some say the Wampus Cat prowls silently in the dense pine forests of East Texas, emitting blood-curdling cries that reverberate through the night. Others claim to have witnessed the creature sprinting across open plains, leaving behind a trail of shattered trees and trampled earth. The bravest souls speak of unsettling encounters near secluded water sources where the Wampus Cat is said to drink, its presence sending wildlife scattering in terror. Those who have encountered the Wampus Cat speak of an uncanny primal energy emanating from the creature. Its presence is said to invoke an inexplicable sense of dread, as if crossing paths with an otherworldly force deeply rooted in the untamed heart of Texas. Whether the Wampus Cat is an embodiment of ancient Native American legends or a creature yet to be fully understood, we still don't know. Number 9, the Chupacabra. The Chupacabra is a legendary creature that has gained notoriety throughout the world. Sightings reported across Latin America, the United States. The creature is described as having a reptilian or canine-like appearance with large fangs and a pronounced spine along its back. It's said to prey on livestock, draining their blood and leaving behind a trail of carnage. One of the most famous encounters occurred in Texas, however, when a woman named Phyllis Canyon discovered what she believed to be the remains of the creature on the side of a road. Canyon was initially skeptical of reports of the Chupacabra, but was pretty convinced of its existence after discovering this bizarre carcass. She had also found several of her chickens dead on her property around the time time she found this strange animal. Canyon's discovery sparked quite a media frenzy with reports and cryptid enthusiasts from around the world jumping in excitement. While some skeptics dismissed the creature as a coyote or other known animal, Canyon maintained that its appearance was unlike anything she had ever seen before, and it definitely could be some sort of wild dog with mange or something, but either way, pretty gnarly looking animal. In 2001, a 19-year-old driving in Pennsylvania reported seeing a bird-like creature with a wingspan of 10 to 15 feet, and it had an elongated head. Two other witnesses later reported seeing similar creatures in the same area, and all of this was very reminiscent of sightings in Texas in 1976 and 82 that were also described as looking sort of like an ancient pterosaur. These sightings in Texas occurred near the location where the fossil of a large pterosaur was first discovered, and what was most fascinating about these sightings were that they seemed to have occurred close together in waves, so it seems like people were really seeing something. One possible explanation could be the frigate bird, which can have a wingspan of up to 8 feet. Frigate birds tend to soar for long periods and only land to tend to their young. At number 7, we have Sasquatch, because these things are everywhere, apparently. Everyone has their own version of this big hairy beast. So look, Sasquatch needs no introduction, but I'm gonna give the big hairy lug one anyway. The Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, as he's commonly known, is basically the ultimate celebrity cryptid. Everyone knows who he is, but nobody has actually seen him in person, or have they? Apparently, Texas is home to many Bigfoot sightings. It seems that he's been spotted more than a few times wandering around in the woods. Some people claim that he's up to 10 feet tall, because everything is bigger in Texas, covered in hair, and smells like a wet dog. Others say that he's more of a gentle giant who just wants to be left alone. All I know is there really are Bigfoot roaming around in the wilderness of Texas. They gotta be just sweltering hot with all that fur. The legend of the donkey lady of San Antonio is a famous Texas urban legend. According to the legend, the donkey lady is a half-human, half-donkey creature that roams the area. Some say she was once a beautiful woman who was tragically burned and disfigured in a fire. Some say she was thrown in a river with her pet donkey and now haunts the Elm Creek Bridge. Some claim to have actually seen her, and it's a tale that's been passed down from generation to generation, and who knows, maybe there's some truth to it. I mean, if you squint your eyes while looking at a donkey long enough, it sort of looks like a person, right? And if you've ever heard a donkey braying in the middle of the night, not hard to imagine it could be some sort of supernatural creature. Then again, maybe the donkey lady is just a misunderstood animal, human hybrid who's just trying to find her place in the world. Up next, we have the skunk ape. Oh boy, do I love the skunk ape. The skunk ape is a legendary cryptid that is mostly seen in Florida, but there have also been numerous sightings in Texas and a couple other states. This creature is similar to Bigfoot, but it is said to have a distinct odor. That's the name. And it also likes hanging around swamps. That's where most apes tend to hang out in nature. Many people have claimed to have seen this elusive creature, and some even have photographic evidence to support their claims. In 2000, a series of photos surfaced taken by a woman on her back porch that showed what appeared to be a skunk ape walking through a swampy area, and I have always loved these photos. Yes, it could definitely be an escaped orangutan or something, but it's pretty freaky nonetheless. And if it is a costume, which I really don't think it is, it's got to be a pretty damn good one. The photos were taken in Florida, but it's not surprising that there have been sightings in Texas as well. After all, Texas is a vast state with plenty of forests and wilderness areas where a creature like the skunk ape could hide. Despite the many sightings and alleged evidence, there are still skeptics who don't believe in the existence of skunk ape, but for those who have seen it or have smelt its distinctive odor, there's no denying there is something strange and mysterious lurking in the swamps and woods of Florida and Texas. The black-eyed children. Black-eyed children are a mysterious and creepy phenomenon that have captivated the attention of paranormal enthusiasts for years. The supposed sightings involve encountering children with completely black eyes, just no sclera in there, and they seem to appear out of nowhere and ask to be let into people's homes or vehicles. Sometimes they ask you to help them with a small favor, but their true intentions are sinister because they have pure black eyes. Some people believe these children are demonic or extraterrestrial in origin, while others believe they are simply a creepy urban legend. The first written account of the black-eyed children, or at least the most famous, came from Texas reporter Brian Bethel in 1996. Bethel shared his experience of encountering two children with completely black eyes while sitting in his car. Since Bethel's account, numerous reports of black-eyed children have emerged, with many claiming to have reported feeling a sense of dread and unease when encountering these mysterious rascals. And I think I know why people feel a little off seeing these kids. Their eyes are pure black. That would do it for me. The Beast of Bears. The Beast of Bears is a cryptid that is said to roam the wilds of Texas, resembling a large, scarred-up bear with missing patches of fur. It's rumored to live near swamps, adding to the creature's mysterious allure. Some even say that it has gills, making it a truly unique and peculiar creature. What kind of bizarre mashup of things is this? Goatman apparently has gills too, so why are all these big hairy Texas monsters also aquatic? Anyway, the Beast of Bears also boasts large red eyes like those of the Mothman, which only adds to the intrigue surrounding this cryptid. The first sighting of the Beast of Bears was in 1973 at a camping spot near the town of Alice, Texas. Since then, over 31 sightings have been reported, with the most recent being in a backyard outside Crestview, Florida. However, the Beast of Bears is most closely associated with Texas. Many reports of sightings coming from various parts of the state. Despite skeptics dismissing the Beast of Bears as a hoax, there is evidence to suggest that the creature may be real. Even a drawing of the creature suggests that it may be found not only in Texas, but also up in Canada. Some have even linked the Beast of Bears to Inuit stories about giant bears that drag people underwater and eat them. And coming in at number 2, the Lake Worth Monster. The Lake Worth Monster, also known as the famous Goatman, is a cryptid that has long captivated the attention of Texans. Sightings of the creature began in the summer of 1969, when a group of people reported encountering a strange half-man, half-goat-like creature near Lake Worth, just outside of Fort Worth. Descriptions of the creature vary, but most witnesses report seeing a towering, hairy beast with a goat's head, cloven hooves, and the ability to leap great distances. Some descriptions of the strange beast, and some even describe it as having fishy scales all over its body, which don't seem to fit. But anyway, over the course of several weeks, the creature was allegedly sighted by numerous individuals, leading to a media frenzy and an increased public interest in the elusive creature. One article written by reporter Jim Mars was written with the, I gotta say, hilarious headline, "Fishy Man-Goat Terrifies Couple Parked at Lake Worth." Love that. Some locals claimed the creature was aggressive, throwing car tires and rocks at those who stumbled upon it, while others reported it simply observing them from a distance. And finally, we have the NASA Gargoyle. There have been multiple sightings of this mysterious creature, but the first reported sighting, and definitely the most famous, was from NASA employee Frank Shaw, who worked in Houston's Johnson Space Center. Shaw had reported walking back to his car after his shift and spotted what looked to be a large, winged, jet-black humanoid creature perched on one of the Space Center's buildings. Suddenly, it started unfurling its wings, which apparently made this awful crackling sound, and then it just swooped into the air. I'm picturing the creature from Jeepers Creepers here, so not pleasant. Shaw had been completely stunned, frozen in fear at the sight of whatever this beast was, but suddenly kind of snapped out of it as soon as the thing flew into the air and started making his way back to his car, where in classic horror movie fashion, he struggled to get his keys into the door. I'm picturing him just kind of like dropping them a couple times. But he finally got into his car and just flew out of there. Here's what's really interesting about this incident though. Apparently there were other employees at the station who had also had encounters with the winged monstrosity. Apparently there had been a file opened on the creature just a few months before Shaw saw it, after 2 German shepherds at the station had been found completely mutilated in the same area as Shaw's sighting, so that's pretty interesting.
Number 10, White Rock Lake. White Rock Lake is an area that is filled with many legends. It's home to the ghost of the Lady of the Lake. Years ago, a young couple was driving home from a party along the lake late one night. The two were tired and ready to go home when the wife suddenly screamed at her husband to stop the car. A young woman in a long white gown had appeared in the road before them. The couple asked the woman if she needed a ride and she accepted. They drove on, and all while the wife could hear the steady drip, drip, drip of water. But once they reached the address the woman had given them, they turned around to find her gone, leaving behind only a puddle. Confused, the couple got out at the address and knocked on the door. An elderly man answered. They told the man about the young woman they had just picked up, and he sighed and told them they were not the first couple to come knocking on his door late at night. The woman they had picked up was his daughter, who had drowned in White Rock Lake 10 years earlier. The Lady of the Lake has been spotted and even picked up many times since, and continues to haunt White Rock Lake in her white gown, looking for a way back home, and this is just sad. Number 9. Adolphus Hotel. The Adolphus Hotel was built on the former site of Dallas's original City Hall in 1912, and the hotel has a reputation as one of the city's most prominent historical landmarks. In addition to being the oldest hotel in the city, it's no surprise it's also among the most haunted. One of the most famous spirits here is an apparition who appears in a 1930s era white wedding gown, the spirit of a jilted bride who was supposed to have been married in one of the hotel's glamorous ballrooms on the 19th floor, but ended up taking her own life at the hotel instead when her groom left her at the altar. Ever since that night, guests staying on the 19th floor report hearing a woman crying, footsteps running up and down the hall, and even the sound of rope creaking under the strain of a body. The bride spirit has been spotted wandering the halls after events and parties, still wearing her white dress and veil. Again, this is just incredibly sad. Staff and guests of the hotel also report an eerie feeling of being watched or of a presence in the room with them. Now, not all ghost residents have sad backstories, as many are believed to be former guests who checked in again during the afterlife because they had such a good time in the hotel back in their days among the living. Guess it's a cool place to be in life and death. Number 8. The Coombs Creek Trail. Located in Oak Cliff, this trail offers a serene, scenic path along Coombs Creek for nature lovers to enjoy, but everything is not as it seems, as this trail has an eerie history. Years ago, a young girl named Mary would ride her bike every day along the trail, but one day Mary never returned home. It's still unknown whether Mary drowned in the creek, was struck by a passing train, or was taken, but she seems to have disappeared without a trace. Hikers still report seeing the figure of a young girl riding her bike dangerously close to the edge of the water, but when they call out to warn her, she vanishes into thin air. Others have reported seeing a small ghostly face of a young girl peeking at them from behind a tree. When they try to move closer to investigate, the face disappears. Then the face reappears further along the trail, inviting the hiker to follow her deeper and deeper into the woods. And if a ghost child is trying to get me to go deeper in the woods, I'm just gonna turn around and leave. Number 7. The Majestic Theater. The Majestic Theater is located on Elm Street in downtown Dallas. Elm Street? No, I've seen that movie before. Now, in the 1910s, it housed live vaudevillian performances before transitioning to screening films in 1922. The Majestic remained in business until the 1970s, and then its doors were reopened for live performances in 1983 after it landed on the National Register of Historic Places. Some say the theater's original owner, Carl Hopitzel, still haunts the building, making sure things run according to his liking. One former employee claims he shared an office space with Carl during his time there. He reports that one of his responsibilities each night was to ensure that the door in his office leading to the theater was locked, but each morning when he showed up for work, the door was wide open, and a strange chill would permeate from the room. When he mentioned this to his manager, he laughed and explained that this was only Carl, who liked to use the door to get into the theater and check up on things. Weird smells, stage props inexplicably moving, and a light hanging above the balcony illuminating on its own own have all been attributed to Carl. His spirit is rumored to linger there to this day, making sure his theater runs smoothly and maybe catching a show or two. Number 6. Snuffers Restaurant on Greenville Avenue. Snuffers is a popular local chain that serves classic American food, or at least that's what it says when I Google it. But the location on Greenville Avenue serves up a lot more than just burgers. Customers and staff of the Dallas restaurant claim that the place is seriously haunted. Before Snuffers, there was an easy parlor. It seems that a man was badly injured after hours when a fight broke out at an employee party. He then stumbled into the bathroom where he drew his final breaths. Years later, once Easy Parlor became Snuffers, the managers would sit at a table by the bathrooms each night to finish up closing paperwork. As they sat in the dark, near-empty restaurant, they would listen as antagonized, stumbling footsteps made their way to the bathroom, then watch as the door creaked open by itself and never shut. In 2013, the original building was demolished and reconstructed, but reports of strange happenings didn't stop. Other employees have since reported feeling cold gusts of wind rush by them and doors slamming shut all on their own. Sounds like a dinner and a show to me. Number 5. Flagpole Hill. Just adjacent to White Rock Lake is a road leading to the infamous Flagpole Hill, the rumored location of a band of rock-hurdling poltergeists. Yep, you heard that right, they just throw rocks at you. Passerbys report driving through the area late at night only to be pelted by a rain of pebbles. When they got out of the car to chase down the culprits, there were none to be found. Local legend identifies the ghost as 3 restless spirits tangled in the dark history of the area. According to the story, a construction worker ended their own life in the house on Flagpole Hill before its completion, and a hired hitman was later convicted of taking out the couple who occupied it. Now, don't think just because you're not in a car, you're safe. Those walking on foot rather than driving past seem to be just as unlucky. Hikers and other residents of the area have reported an unseen assailant pelting them with rocks as they pass by. Sounds like this place really rocks. Get it? Because so funny. Number 4. The Miller Moore Mansion. Located in Dallas Heritage Village is Miller Moore Mansion. It was completed in 1857 and was the home of William Brown Miller, who served in the Confederate Army. This beautiful home is said to be haunted by an unidentified lady ghost who always seems to lurk near the nursery. Now, the general belief of who the lady is the spirit of a woman named Emma. Now, Emma was the 3rd wife of William Brown Miller, and allegedly everyone who encounters Emma tells a similar story. People see a woman going up the stairs and they describe the same woman, always wearing a long brown dress. She has been seen in the front foyer, and people claim to have seen her in the middle window where the nursery is. Many Miller Moore visitors have also reported unexplained cold spots and a distinct feeling of being watched during their visit. Seems like Emma is always watching. Number 3. Sons of Herman Hall. Herman Hall's website marks itself as the oldest freestanding wood structure in Dallas, as well as the oldest bar. And for over 100 years, the hall has held concerts, parties, and dances. So no wonder the dead come back there to party. Both staff members and guests of the hall have reported strange occurrences, especially in late hours of the night. Some guests have seen paintings fly off the wall as thrown by some unseen force. Others have heard footsteps in the hallways and seen doors suddenly slam shut. Guests also claim to hear children laughing, even when no children were present, which is just creepy. Longtime staff members of Herman Hall report sensing a lingering presence and seeing flashes of light and shadow. One particular staff member recounts a time he and some other employees saw a couple dressed in Victorian-era clothing walk past them and go upstairs, but about 30 minutes later, when the couple hadn't returned, the staff went upstairs to find all the doors locked and no one inside them. I just think these ghosts want to return to their party days though. Number 2. Goatman's Bridge. Goatman's Bridge, more formally known as the Old Alton Bridge in Argyle. Dating back to the 1930s, locals have told tales of the specter of a strange half-man, half-goat creature lurking beneath the bridge. The Goatman is said to stand over 7 feet tall with big horns and glowing red eyes, which to me just sounds like the devil, but I mean, hey, Goatman is a cool name. Some believe the Goatman remains dormant for years at a time and awakes only to hunt for prey. Now, the Goatman isn't the only spirit on this bridge, as to keep him company is another spirit that that of a young mother crying out eternally for her lost child. Residents making their way over the bridge late at night have reported hearing her ghostly wails. Some say the two ghosts are connected, and that years ago the goat man stole the young woman's baby. When she found out, she threw herself from the bridge, and her spirit has haunted it ever since. Now, I already don't like bridges because of heights and being over bodies of water, but being on a haunted bridge, no thank you. And coming in at number 1 is Miss Molly's Hotel. Located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Miss Molly's Hotel is a little deceiving. In the lawless pioneer days of the Old West, Miss Molly's operated as a bordello, making working girls and their customers among the most common apparitions to appear here. One such customer even has a room named after him, the Cowboy Room, where he has been frequently spotted by guests and staff of the hotel. His name is Jake the Cowboy, and when Paula Goins became manager of Miss Molly's, she had no clue that it was haunted. After months, she reported that strange things started happening, and she eventually saw Jake herself. She said, "I saw him in full body. He walked into a room and shut the door behind him, and I went up and knocked on the door and opened the door and no one was there. That is when I knew that something was up, because I'm sitting there thinking, I know I'm not crazy." Another ghost there is assumed to be a former madame by the name of Josie King. Some suspect that she oversaw the house during its bordello days. Josie is seen a lot, usually at 3 a.m. at the foot of the bed, and allegedly Josie likes to watch people sleep. No thanks. Guests can also look at the hotel's collection of creepy photographs or listen to eerie audio recordings captured through the years.
Number 10. Bragg Road, Saratoga. The Big Thicket in southeast Texas is a dense forested area that runs along the Alabama border, and there are very few roads that cut through it. One of the most infamous is Bragg Road. In 1904, the road was built as a rail line to connect the now abandoned town of Bragg to the now thriving Saratoga. While the rails have long since been torn up, some ghostly reminders of the past still remain. When you drive down this lonely 8-mile long dirt road at night, you, like thousands of others before you, are sure to see what are known as the ghost lights. Basketball-sized orbs of light that float and dance through the air, even changing in color according to some. There are a few stories on what these lights actually are. The most popular story is that a tragedy occurred on a midnight train run. The conductor, sleep-deprived from a long journey through the state, needed some fresh air to wake himself up. He stuck his head out the window, and in a freak accident, he was decapitated by a tree. And now his spirit is wandering the road, searching for his lost head. The other prevailing theory is that the light is a ghostly lantern belonging to a groom whose bride left him at the altar. He went searching for her in the forest at night, but has still never found her to this day. Number 9. Baker Hotel, Mineral Wells. Mineral Wells is known for its, you guessed it, mineral-rich water. In the 1880s, people would travel from all over Texas to drink some, and it supposedly had healing powers and could cure almost any ailment. And with that kind of tourist attraction, you need somewhere for all of these folks to stay. And so, in 1929, the Baker Hotel was opened. With 14 floors and 450 rooms, it was the biggest hotel for miles, and it used the mineral water as a draw for all sorts of people. To this day, workers and visitors alike find small things missing from their pockets or bags while touring the grounds, and workers have later found them on the floor in the Baker Suite, the room where the owner lived and died. They also report the smell of cigar smoke in the air, another habit of Mr. Baker, further proving his presence. But there are also some less friendly spirits here, notably that of the chopped bellhop, who lost his life in a freak elevator accident that saw his top half removed from the bottom half of his body. He's seen floating sans legs and screaming to be made whole again. Workers recommend you stay away, lest you meet the same fate. Known for its programs in engineering, technology, and agriculture, Texas A&M is one of the most highly regarded universities in the state. But the engineering building is home to not only future engineers, but the spirit of a former worker. In 1959, Roy Sims was the foreman for the meat locker in what was then the Animal Industries building. He was showing his assistant some tips on butchering bacon, and when the assistant stepped out to get them both some coffee, the knife slipped and Sims accidentally sliced his leg, severing his femoral artery in the process. The assistant returned to see Roy bleeding out on the floor and called an ambulance, but it was too late, and he passed away. Students and faculty alike report strange happenings in the building to this day. Noises and crashes, cool breezes when all the windows and doors are shut, and even objects moving or being out of place. And many attribute this to the ghost of Roy Sims just trying to get back to work. Number 7. Lake Highlands High School, Dallas. Imagine being back in high school, and during a rehearsal for the school play, the lights suddenly go out, and when they come back on, costumes have moved, props have crashed to the floor, and you see a ghostly apparition rise back up to the rafters. This is exactly what some students and faculty have reported at the Dallas High School. Reportedly, the ghost is that of a former student, Elizabeth, who took her own life jumping from the roof of the auditorium. While many attribute the cold spots and strange noises to the wind, there is no denying that there was a student named Elizabeth who attended the school around the same time the urban legend takes place and passed away, though the cause remains unclear. Number 6 on our list, the Ritz Theater in Corpus Christi. While there are no accounts of specific deaths associated with what was once South Texas's most beautiful theater, there are certainly enough ghostly happenings to make anyone's skin crawl. Paranormal investigators have reported that while walking through the now crumbling building, you can feel cold spots, hear voices, and see orbs floating through the air, some of which they've actually been able to catch on camera. Perhaps these are spirits who never managed to move on, or maybe they're happy right where they are, enjoying a pleasant night out at the theater in the afterlife. We won't know until somebody asks. Number 5. Jefferson Hotel, Jefferson. Originally built in 1851 as a cotton warehouse, the Jefferson Hotel has had haunting stories for decades. To this day, workers who were once skeptical of spirits have been converted to believers after dishes have gone flying, phantom footsteps were heard, and the front switchboard lit up as though the rooms were talking to each other, even when the hotel was closed to guests. Many attribute this to the ghost of Elizabeth, common ghost name I guess, who took her own life in the hotel after her soon-to-be husband sent a note that he would not be coming to the wedding. This has been verified by newspapers to have happened in the 1870s, and there have been sightings of a woman in white roaming the halls of the hotel ever since. Number 4. Hendley Row, Galveston. One of the oldest still operating commercial buildings in the city, Hendley Row has seen many occupants throughout its time. Most notably, it was a watchtower during the American Civil War. Some have reported a soldier on the roof of the building at night watching out for Union Army members. There are also many spirits who appear soaked and wet from the 1900 storm that they and 12,000 others lost their lives in. However, my favorite story from this building is actually more recent. The manager of the market was gifted a photo of Dr. Wilbur, a man who had lived and died in the buildings many years before, and they decided to hang it in the market as a historical artifact. When Hurricane Ike hit the city in 2008 and left the building in 10 feet of water, damaging so much of the property, the picture remained unharmed, despite falling in the water. During their annual Day of the Dead celebration, the photo is included on the altar, along with many other objects and candles. With a 3-person rotation to ensure it's done, the candles are extinguished at night. Yet every year, the candles are mysteriously already burning the next morning. Number 3. Haunted Train Tracks, San Antonio. On a dark night in 1936, at the rail crossing on Shane Road just outside of San Antonio, a tragedy occurred which would rock the state to its core. An after-hours event at the local elementary school had many students staying late that night, and the school bus service was diverted till later in the evening. When it was time to go, students loaded up and headed home. Unfortunately for some, this would be their last ride. The bus had been working better than ever all evening, the bus driver noted, and suddenly it stalled out on the rail tracks. The driver tried to restart the vehicle, but it was no use. Then suddenly a train appeared. Its lamp must have been out, and it was too late to move the bus, even if it was working. The driver began to carry students off the bus as fast as he could, but then the bus was hit by the train side on, and the driver was thrown from the window. 10 students survived, but many others didn't. After recovering from his injuries and leaving the hospital weeks later, the bus driver got in his car and returned to the rail crossing that night. Haunted by grief, he drove his car onto the tracks, turned it off, and hurled his keys into the night, determined to take his own life. And when he saw the train charging down the tracks, he suddenly felt the car rolling forward, all the way off the tracks and out of harm's way. When he inspected his car, he saw multiple sets of small handprints on the back, perhaps those of the students, not wishing for his life to be lost in the same way theirs had. Number 2. Hotel Galvez, Galveston. After the devastating hurricane in 1900 that left many dead and much of the town destroyed, Galveston decided to rebuild. And with that came the Hotel Galvez. Many spirits are said to be lurking the grounds, even to this day, but the most infamous of them all is Audra. In 1952, she was staying in room 501, while her fiancé was out at sea working on a cargo vessel. When news came from the company that their ship had sunk and all hands on board were lost, Audra decided to end her life in the hotel room that night. But a few days later, later, her betrothed returned to the hotel. Reports had been wrong and he had survived the shipwreck, and elated to see his fiancée, he threw open the doors to room 501 and saw her body. Distraught, he then took his own life, laying next to her on the bed. And finally, we reach your #1 most suggested haunted place in Texas, Goatman's Bridge. This bridge in Denton once led to the homestead of a farmer, the Goatman, who was renowned for the quality of his farm's milk, cheeses, and meat. The former owner of the land never saw any such success while he operated the farm, and in a booze-fueled fit of jealousy, he attacked the farmer, put a rope around his neck, and threw him from the side of the bridge. He then returned to the homestead and burned it to the ground, taking the lives of the family and the livestock. When he returned to the bridge to check on his gruesome handiwork, he looked below only to see an empty noose. He then heard 3 loud metal clangs, like someone was knocking on the bridge. And then suddenly behind him, a large, ghostly man with a goat for a head appeared, put a noose around his neck, and threw him over the side of the bridge, taking revenge for himself and his family. Now they say that if you visit the old Alton Bridge at night and knock 3 times, you too will see the Goat Man. But be warned, he does not like to be disturbed.
Starting us off at number 10, the Elder Street Artist Lofts. Formerly a hospital, it's no surprise to anyone that these lofts are believed to be one of the most haunted locations in Houston, Texas. But it's not for the reason you may think. While of course many died in the hospital during its operation, as is totally normal, the paranormal experiences have to do with the fact that the hospital was built over a cemetery where roughly 3,000 Civil War and yellow fever victims were buried, along with countless slaves. And isn't that just a recipe for disaster? At the time of construction, there was a ton of controversy as people were understandably concerned about building on top of a cemetery. So to ease the town, they built the basement above ground and left the graves undisturbed. Apparently many graves were actually relocated as well, but there was no formal sweep for remains, so who knows what was left behind. As many in the town predicted, their efforts to build on top of dead bodies did not evade the inevitable spirits from rising into the building, and over the years many have reported sightings of strange, shadowy figures and feelings of being watched, only to see that no one is there. Now, many actually live in these apartments today, but let me tell you, I don't care how nice these lofts are, you couldn't pay me to live in a building where ghosts were known to roam around the halls. Next up at number 9, Al Engineering Building. Back in 1959, a man named Roy Sims, who was an instructor at the university, made a grave mistake that changed his life forever. Back then, it was known as the Animal Industries Building and was home to the meat locker where students would learn how to properly butcher animals. Now, this particular day, Roy went down into the basement where the meat locker was to get some work done alone. Once down there, he started carving up a pig for some bacon when suddenly the knife in his hand slipped and punctured his thigh right in his femoral artery. Alone and bleeding out, some say he dragged himself across the floor towards the elevator before he died, leaving a long trail of blood behind him. It's believed that he haunts the building to this day, with reports of people hearing strange noises and screams coming from the basement. Some have even seen apparitions or strange objects moving along the wall, and sometimes even finding unexplained dark stains on the floor of the building. Believe it or not, some janitors have even requested to be reassigned to different areas of the building out of fear for the terrifying things they've witnessed. So enter if you dare, as the basement continues to haunt all that dare to try. Next up at number 8, the Millermore Mansion. Once home to wealthy plantation owners in 1861, this Dallas mansion saw more death in its lifetime than you can imagine. The mansion was owned by one William Brown Miller, and while living there he married, divorced, and then remarried another 3 times. Sadly, 2 of Miller's wives died tragically. His second wife, Minerva, died of an unknown illness, and Emma died while in childbirth. It seems that these souls, among many others, never left the mansion and can be found terrifying all who dare to visit. Guests and staff have reported feelings of being watched in the master bedroom and strange sudden drops in temperature even in the hot summer months. Visitors say they can hear baby baby screams coming from the nursery and the sound of a crib being dragged into the master bedroom. But like magic, once the crib reaches the master, suddenly the baby's cries stop immediately. And if that wasn't enough to spook you, there have been countless reports of crows flying into the glass of windows only to find ghostly appearance of a face appear. Could it be the ghost of Emma trying to care for her baby they hear? You certainly won't see me sticking around long enough to find out. Next up at number 7, the White Sanitarium. Located in Wichita Falls, the White Sanitarium, also commonly known as the Old Insane Asylum, opened in 1926 under the direction of Frank White, but became abandoned sometime in the 1950s. Now, I don't know about you, but the idea of a haunted abandoned asylum just sounds like the start of a horror movie. I mean, it's not like the people that were sent off to live in asylums have great quality of life, and if they died there, I'm sure they had a vengeance. It is rumored that very strange experiments were conducted in the asylum, which many believe to be the root cause of the hauntings, as they believe these procedures killed many of the patients. Visitors and passers-by have reported hearing children screaming from the building, mysterious lights turning on when there was no electricity connected to the building, and a strange woman in white roaming the grounds and peering through windows, watching all that dare to walk past. Coming in at number 6, Presidio La Bahia. If there is one place that you can certainly guarantee will be haunted by spirits, it's a battlefield. In 1747, the fortress known as Presidio La Bahia was built near the San Antonio River, and it would later become the infamous place of revolutionary conflicts like the Battle of Goliad and the Goliad Massacre. As you can imagine, many soldiers died on these grounds, so it's not hard to imagine how it got its reputation as a terrifying haunted fortress. During the Goliad Massacre in 1836, 341 Texan troopers were executed by the Mexican army, and it's believed that it's these soldiers that died in battle that can be heard crying out in terror as you walk the grounds today. Visitors have reported full body apparitions all around the property, as well as hearing strange conversations in Spanish coming from thin air. The strange wailing has been caught on audio recordings, and that is enough for me to want to leave this place alone for good. The last thing I need is to be haunted by a revolutionary soldier. Coming in at number 5, the Emily Morgan Hotel. Built in 1924 in San Antonio, Texas, the building was originally designed to be a medical arts building. Complete with a crematorium and morgue, it was known to house hundreds of doctors and was considered one of the best hospitals one could visit. That was until it closed in 1976 and became an office building, and then just 10 years later, a hotel. Today, those who work at the hotel tell frequent stories of the terrifying encounters they've had, specifically in the basement. What is now the basement of the hotel was the crematorium and morgue in its days as a hospital, and it seems whoever was left in that morgue all those years ago is not yet finished with that building or anyone who dares enter. Employees claim to have seen orbs, heard screams, and been greeted by the smell of burning flesh. But it's not just the basement that will leave you running for the hills. Apparently, the 7th floor is known to have its fair share of scary spectacles. Allegedly haunted by the ghost of a bride, no one knows what her connection is to the building, but many have come into contact with her. Guests have been known to check out in the middle of the night after hearing blood-curdling screams and seeing her reflection in the mirror. And most frightening of all is that some say they've actually seen her walk through walls. So save yourself the sleepless nights and trauma and just book a different hotel if you ever plan to visit San Antonio. Coming in at number 4, the Magnolia Hotel. Back in 1840, a Texas Ranger named James Campbell built a log cabin that later expanded into a hotel. Now, this little hotel turned out to be a fairly successful little business right up until the early 1900s, but that is where the story gets dark. Most are not surprised by the haunting of the building, as not long after the log cabin was built, Campbell, the ranger who built it, was killed, leaving the property completely abandoned. With no one to oversee the property, who knows what shady people made their way in? Or worse, who didn't make it out. When it was purchased in 2013 by a couple looking to bring the building back to life, it did not take them long to figure out that this place was horrifyingly haunted. The couple said they began experiencing supernatural events as soon as repairs commenced and claimed to have heard doors slamming out of nowhere, witnessing shadowy outlines hovering in doorways, and even have photos showing strange figures climbing out of mirrors. Ugh. Since its doors open to the public, visitors from all around the world have experienced the same strange paranormal occurrences, and there have been hundreds of accounts from people saying they saw furniture move on its own and hearing strange voices when no one was around. To date, Magnolia Hotel is known to be haunted by at least 13 different spirits, but those are just the ones they've found. The real number is assumed to be much higher. Next up at number 3, Littlefield House. Although the outside may look like a beautiful fairy castle, don't let that fool you. Located in Austin, the Littlefield House is a terrifying mansion said to be haunted by Alice Littlefield, the former mistress of the house. As legend goes, Alice and George Littlefield were a beloved couple throughout all of Austin. They couldn't have their own children, but cared deeply for their nieces and nephews and paid for all 29 of them to go to university. But not all was so perfect behind closed doors. When George would leave the house to run errands, he would lock Alice in the attic, fearing she would be kidnapped in his absence and wanting to keep her safe. Well, naturally, as being locked in an attic does to a person, she began to become hysterical, and her fear of being kidnapped and killed that was instilled by her husband slowly started to drive her mad. George then died before Alice, and it seems she slipped further into hysteria until her own death. Now Alice is known to haunt the mansion, where inexplicable sounds and shrieks can be heard echoing through the house, along with stomping feet darting up and down the stairs. If you listen closely, you just might hear her playing the piano, waiting for her husband to return. Coming in at number 2, the DeSoto Hotel. Located in El Paso, the DeSoto Hotel has been the subject for many paranormal investigations through the years. The hotel has been around for over 100 years, and if you ask the locals, they prefer not to speak of it, as many get the creeps just by thinking about it. There are 3 spirits that are known to haunt the halls of the DeSoto Hotel, and investigators have captured some truly creepy evidence over the years. One of the spirits, known as the shadow in the doorway, has been captured on video lurking in the hotel's abandoned hallways, while another spirit, who's been named Sarah, is known to creepily laugh and giggle as you walk through the building. But the one you really need to be afraid of is the spirit that lives in the basement. It seems like nothing good ever happens in old creepy basements, and the DeSoto Hotel is no different. Rumored to have been used for satanic rituals in its early days as a hotel, whatever is down there does not want you to visit. While some believe the entity to be a restless spirit incapable of controlling their anger, some are convinced it's a demon. Employees and investigators have reported being pinched, growled at, scratched, hit, and even bitten by whatever is down there, and investigators have even captured what sounds like a demon answering questions on an EVP. Let's just hope that whatever is down there stays in the basement and doesn't start wandering through the rest of the building. Who knows what dangers could happen then. Coming in at number 1, the Old Park Hotel. Built back in 1886 as a lodging for cowboys in the Ballinger area, the Old Park Hotel has had a wide variety of purposes over the years, including a schoolhouse, a courthouse, and most famously, a brothel. Now a B&B and antique store, you can go and see for yourself, but visitors beware, as the previous owner has reportedly identified 30 different entities present in the hotel, and it's no doubt that you'll start to experience strange paranormal sensations as soon as you enter. Patrons have reported having entire conversations with women in costume, who they believe to be staff, only for them to disappear suddenly without a trace. But the worst and most scary is the spirit of the cowboy. Known to be a very angry spirit, the cowboy has been witnessed by countless guests as well as caught on camera standing menacingly in the doorway holding what appears to be a pistol. But that's not all. One paranormal investigator looking for more information on the cowboy came by and left a piece of equipment in the room to monitor the spirit. He left to go downstairs to monitor, but when he heard a large crash from upstairs, he rushed back up only to find it completely smashed and destroyed all over the floor. Not only that, but there have been many accounts of people feeling touched or tugged or even being pushed down the stairs when no one was around them. In fact, some investigators have been so traumatized that they've checked out in the middle of the night, never to return again. Now, if a spirit can scare an investigator, then that's all the convincing I need to stay as far away as possible.
Number 10. White Rock Lake Park, Dallas. In 1943, the story of the ghost of White Rock was published in a Texas folklore publication, Backwoods to Border. The story goes that there was a young couple who was looking for somewhere they could be alone. They drove down a deserted road and parked on the shore of the lake. When they turned their headlights on, they saw someone walking towards them. A woman dressed in a white sheer dress who was soaking wet was coming closer and closer to their car. Concerned, they asked the woman if she was alright, and the woman then spoke and said, "I'm sorry to intrude, and I would not under any other circumstances, but I must find a way home immediately. My boat overturned, the others are safe, but I must get home." The couple agreed to take her home, and she gave them an address not too far away. As they drove off, the driver turned back to ask for some directions, but the backseat was empty and soaking wet. When they arrived at the address the woman in white gave them, a man answered the door, and when he was told what happened, he replied, "You are the third couple who's come to me with this story. 3 weeks ago, while sailing on White Rock Lake, my daughter drowned. Many sightings have been reported since." Number 9. The Moody Mansion, Galveston. Before I get to the next entry, make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video so that I can keep bringing you the most amazing content. Before it was known as the Moody Mansion, it was the Willis Mansion. Built for Narcissa Willis in 1895, this 31-room mansion boasts a Romanesque architecture with ornate features like stained glass windows and hand-carved woodwork. She commissioned the house to be built against her late husband's wishes after he'd passed, spending the family inheritance in the process, something her 10 children did not appreciate. Unfortunately, she didn't get to live there long since she passed away in 1899, and it was then purchased by the Moodys. In 1900, a hurricane destroyed much of Galveston and took the lives of some 6,000 people, but strangely, the mansion stayed standing, untouched. Perhaps it was the ghost of Narcissa keeping her prized possession safe? Visitors to the house constantly report faces and spectral images showing up in photographs taken in the house, prompting paranormal investigators to come here to do research. Number 8. San Fernando Cathedral, San Antonio. The oldest church in the entire state of Texas has stood tall for nearly 300 years, and in that time it's collected many spirits, some of whom were buried within the walls of the church themselves. When searching for paranormal activity here, one of the first things researchers often see is a white horse trotting in front of the cathedral, only to disappear soon after. It's said that the horse was a gift from an Apache tribe that was refused and killed. Other ghosts that walk the grounds include that of a man dressed in black clothes from the 18th century who follows tours and then suddenly disappears, as well as those of monks who can be seen and heard standing at the back of the pews during services. Number 7. Demon's Road, Huntsville. Formerly known as Bowden Road, this seldom traveled dirt road is creepy enough without the ghost stories. It's overgrown, has misshapen trees, and in the dark seems like something right out of a horror movie. But there is at least one notable spirit who haunts travelers who dare come through here. A boy on a tricycle with glowing eyes has been reported by many people riding down the road. He appears in the middle of the road and stares you down until you approach him, and once you do, a thick fog rises from the ground and he disappears. There's one more story about Demon's Road that I found super interesting though. Two friends heard that the road was haunted and decided to check it out for themselves, and as they drove down it in the middle of the night, the trees seemed to shift and shake, and then they arrived at their destination at the end of Demon's Road, which just so happens to be the next entry on our list. Number 6. Martha Chapel Cemetery. When the two men drove up to the cemetery, which was named after the first person who was buried there, Martha Palmer, moonlight was piercing through the clouds and lighting the headstones and epitaphs before them. They both got out to crack a few brews and explore the cemetery, but when the driver decided to pour some on one of the graves, a skeletal hand burst from the ground, grabbing at his ankle and dragging him into the dirt. His friend and passenger ran over to help, kicking at the zombie-like arm and dragging him away. After he was freed, the driver called out for them to escape, and when he got back to his car, he looked back, but didn't see his friend who supposedly just saved his life. He was actually still sitting in the passenger seat, asleep. And as he peeled out and drove back down Demon's Road, his passenger slumped over into his lap, and the driver realized that his friend had died. Allegedly, he passed away from a heart attack on the drive to the cemetery. And in 2018, a video surfaced from someone who was exploring the Google Street View of the area and saw a ghostly image appear inside the cemetery. A creepy, pale face of a boy was behind a tree in one shot and missing in the next. There was also a large black figure in the background that did not seem to be human. Spooky stuff. Number 5. Miss Molly's Hotel, Fort Worth. Originally built in 1910 as the Palace Rooms, Fort Worth's first bed and breakfast, Miss Molly's, has had quite the history. During Prohibition, it became a speakeasy called the Oasis. In the 1940s, it became a brothel known as the Guyette Hotel, and after that was shut down, it became Miss Molly's. There have been many reports of unwanted guests appearing here, most notably those of Jake the Cowboy and Josie King, the former madam of the brothel, both of whom are seen as full-body apparitions. Workers and visitors alike have witnessed them walking through locked doors, books being thrown, items disappearing and reappearing in random places, and strangely, change being neatly organized in certain rooms. In room 3, indents on the edge of the bed have appeared as though someone were suddenly sitting on it and shaking the bed while guests sleep. You know, I think Little Richard said it best. Good golly, Miss Molly. Number 4. The Grove, Jefferson. This house, built in 1861, has had many owners over the years, and most would agree that the place is cursed. Since its construction, most of the owners of the house have experienced some sort of tragedy. The original owner lost his cotton factory due to a freak flood, and a lynch mob committed horrible atrocities on the properties, where 4 freed slaves were brutalized and hung from trees on the property. The spirits of these men are said to be the most active spirits on the property. Later owners saw multiple family members take their own lives on the property, and some developed rare diseases. The spirits here are quite restless, and there are reports abound of books flying off shelves, mirrors shattering, voices telling people to do horrible things to themselves, and full-on ghostly apparitions that appear and disappear at will. All of these things show that the Grove definitely belongs on this list. Number 3. The Black Swan Inn, San Antonio. There is no relation to the 2010 film here, but the strange happenings have messed up people's minds just as much as Natalie Portman's characters was. The land that the inn now stands on has major ties to indigenous peoples from some 7,000 years ago, and is also a former battle site for the war between the Texan and Mexican army in 1842. But 35 years later, a dairy farm was founded on the land by a German immigrant. The blood-soaked soil here seems to be a bad place to build, as tragedy struck many who lived on the land. The farmer's wife passed away from cancer she developed shortly after moving in, and 2 years later, he decided to join her by taking his own life. Soon after, the property was purchased by 2 families and renamed the White Gables. However, at the age of 38, one of the new owners, Jolene Street, also passed away due to cancer, and like the owners before them, her husband hung himself in the bedroom. The inn that now stands has had reports of the spirits of the former owners wandering the halls with their necks broken, pushing guests off of their beds, and generally getting up to no good. No matter which way you slice it, this property seems cursed. Number 2. The Hill House, Mineral Springs. In part 2, I talked about the haunted Baker Hotel in Mineral Springs, but it seems that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, because just behind the Baker Hotel lies one of the most haunted places in Texas, the Hill House. Many people stay in this house attempting to witness paranormal activity, and most of them get more than they bargained for, and don't make it through the night without leaving terrified. The owners of the house, who purchased it in 2017 knowing its haunted history, rent it out to individuals and paranormal research teams looking to witness something terrifying. And apparently about 50% of them, including the professionals, leave within the first night. This is due to a spirit or entity that resides here named Toby, who growls loudly in your ear to get out, knocks things over, slams doors, and even gets violent. Videos show all sorts of terrible things happening to people who stay here. like a woman who was taunting the spirits, trying to make something happen, being viciously pulled off of her bed, leaving her bruised, and when she returned a year later, for some reason, she was scratched by something invisible in the room so badly that blood leaked through her shirt. Whoever Toby is, it seems like he doesn't want anyone else to come into his house and will do anything to keep them out. Number 1. Old Town Spring. While the rest of the entries on this list and my other 2 videos have had some terrifying places, our number 1 spot belongs to an entire town that is haunted, and some even say cursed. Allegedly, in the 1700s, a curse was cast by members of the Akokisa tribe on the town and its people who stole their land and killed their kin. And this curse has followed the town all the way through history, continuing even today. Every building in this small town has a haunting story, and I'll share a few of them with you now, but I encourage you to look this up because there are so many more that I just can't get to today. The Whitehall House was built in 1895 and has since been converted into a funeral home, and they have a special room upstairs designated as the Ghost Room, where the spirits of the dead who haunt the building can reside. Figures are seen walking through the door, dancing on the balcony, and heard inside. One of the previous owners decided to renovate the room and experienced, quote, violent spirit activity, and it took years for the ghosts to calm back down. There are now 2 new clauses in the lease agreement for the building. The Ghost Room is not to be disturbed, and you can't break the lease due to a haunting. Many of the buildings in town can be seen with trees growing closely and even through some of the buildings, and allegedly the curse placed upon the town ensured that if anyone cut down any trees, they would experience a terrible fire. And this has happened inexplicably many times to many different buildings in the town, and some quite recent. There is also a hanging tree where a judge sentenced more than 60 people to death, which is an insane rate even by the standards of any time. And the old ice house, which was used to store corpses waiting to be sent to the funeral home, has a heavy energy, and everything goes quiet when you get near it. And it's burned down countless times. You know, with all of these creepy things going on throughout the years, it is no wonder people think Old Town Spring is cursed, and a no-brainer that it ended up number 1 on this list, and it might even be above the number 1s in part 1 and 2. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
And we're starting off this list with what has been dubbed the Lover's Lane case. In 1990, a young couple, Cheryl Henry, 22, and Andy Atkinson, 21, headed out to spend the night together, but they were never seen alive again. Their bodies were found the next day in a wooded area in West Houston known as Lover's Lane. The scene was pretty horrific. There were slash wounds to both of their necks. Andy was found tied to a tree, and Cheryl was found underneath a collapsed fence. Authorities were able to take DNA samples of whoever the assailant was, but they were never able to match it to anyone, meaning most likely this guy had no criminal record. And I do say guy because of the type of DNA they obtained. Over 30 years later, this case has sadly never been solved, and whoever's responsible could still be roaming around out there. The Amber Hagerman case. Amber Hagerman, a 9-year-old girl from Arlington, Texas, was at her grandparents' house on January 13th, 1996. Her and her younger brother were out playing. Amber was on her bicycle and she started riding further and further down the road towards a grocery store. Her brother decided to turn back, but Amber never came back. She'd been taken by a man in a black van in the grocery store parking lot. There was only one witness to her abduction. An intense search effort began, with the community rallying together and law enforcement agencies mobilizing to try and find her. Sadly though, 4 days after her abduction, Amber's body was discovered in a local creek, not a long way from where she was abducted. What makes this case extra tragic is the fact that the assailant has never been found. This tragedy led Amber's mother, Donna Norris, to help establish the Amber Alert system, though, an emergency notification system designed to rapidly disseminate information about abductions to law enforcement agencies, media outlets, and the general public. That's that little ringer thing you get on your phone, the little update. The Amber Alert system has since been adopted and implemented in numerous countries around the world, so if there's anything good that came out of the case, it's that. Next up we have the Killing Fields. This is a stretch of land located in League City near Interstate 45, where numerous bodies have been discovered over the years, leading to one of the most haunting and perplexing mysteries in the state's history. Since the 1970s, law enforcement authorities have uncovered the remains of multiple victims in this desolate area, earning it the chilling nickname. The identity of the assailant or assailants responsible for these deaths remain unknown, and whose victims were primarily young women. Despite extensive investigations, the authorities have struggled to piece together the puzzle and bring the perpetrators to justice. Various theories and speculations have of course emerged over the years, ranging from the involvement of multiple assailants to potential connections with other unsolved crimes in the region. The families of the victims, as well as dedicated investigators, persistently seek answers, hoping to one day unveil the truth and find a bit of closure. The Phantom of Texarkana. The Phantom of Texarkana. Back in the spring of 1946, a series of violent attacks happened in a 10-week time span. Whoever this creep was, they wreaked havoc in the town of Texarkana, going on a rampage of terror. He operated at nighttime, targeting mostly young couples who were just minding their own business, parked in the dark corners of the town. There have been 8 victims, and 5 of which lost their lives. Law enforcement went into overdrive trying to catch this elusive boogeyman, but he managed to slip through their fingers every single time. The whole town was on edge, and folks were locking their doors, looking over their shoulders. The media ate it up, too, referring to it as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, and the story spread far and wide, making this a pretty infamous case. The Phantom vanished as quickly as he appeared, though, leaving the town and its residents in a state of shock, confusion. Decades have passed, and his true identity still remains a mystery. The Icebox. In June of 1965, the residents of Houston, Texas were left in shock and confusion when the lifeless bodies of Fred and Edwina Rogers were discovered inside their own home. But what made this case truly macabre was the manner in which their bodies were found. They had been stuffed inside the family's refrigerator. The horrifying nature of the crime, coupled with the absence of any clear motive or suspects, has propelled the case into this realm of mystery. Investigations into the Icebox case were met with numerous baffling elements. The lack of forced entry suggested that the assailant was either known to the victims or possessed an intricate knowledge of their routines. The home had also been meticulously cleaned after the attack, which made, gathering up evidence pretty difficult. And there was also this absence of a clear motive, which really added another layer of intrigue to it, leaving the investigators grasping at straws for answers. Over the years, theories surrounding the Icebox case have circulated. Some speculate that the crime was a result of a family dispute, while others entertain the possibility that someone could have been hired to commit the act. And then, of course, there are those who hypothesize that the assailant may have simply been a deranged individual who really had no motive and attacked them completely at random. At number 5 on the list, we have the televangelist bomber. This disturbing case began back in January of 1990 when a mysterious package was sent to Lakewood Church in Houston. The daughter of Pastor John Osteen opened the package and it exploded. Luckily, she survived, but received third-degree burns and cuts to her legs and abdomen. In April of that same year, a second package was sent. This one to the Christian Broadcasting Network in Virginia, where a security guard named Scott Sheepers almost lost his life. The package had looked suspicious, and the TV station had received death threats before, so they were on pretty high alert in general. They put the package through an x-ray machine. Sheepers didn't spot anything out of the ordinary at first, but something about it still seemed off to him. He went to cut into part of the box before taking a couple steps back, at which point the package exploded and sending Sheepers flying to the floor. He was transported to the hospital where shrapnel was removed from his leg, and he did survive. Both packages had been sent from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Until this day, the identity of the sender has never been found. Number 4, Sam Bass's treasure. Alright, Sam Bass was this notorious outlaw during the late 1800s. He was known for his daring train robberies. According to the lore, Bass and his gang managed to accumulate quite a substantial fortune through their criminal activities, amassing a hidden treasure that till this day has never been fully recovered. The whereabouts of Bass's treasure has remained a mystery, fueling countless treasure hunting expeditions and inspiring countless stories and speculations, many believe that Bass buried his loot in various locations across Texas, particularly in the areas around Denton where he operated. Some claim that Bass left cryptic clues and treasure maps, teasing treasure hunters with the possibility of finding his hidden riches. Over the years, numerous treasure seekers have dedicated themselves to try and unravel the secrets of the whereabouts of his treasure. They have combed through historical records, studied old maps, and explored the Texas landscape in search of his stash. Despite their efforts though, the treasure has never been found. It's kind of like a Western version of One Piece. I love it. The thing is though, I think if someone did find it, I mean, would they report it? Or would they just kind of like keep it to themselves? I don't know. Maybe someone has found it. At number 3, we have the case of Lori Ruff. Lori Ruff was this woman with a seemingly ordinary existence, although she was always rather secretive about her past. And her husband, Blake Ruff, had a lot of questions, and as it would turn out, she wasn't exactly who she seemed. In 2010, she ended up taking her secrets to the grave after taking her own life, leaving behind a trail of these perplexing clues and unanswered questions. Blake Ruff discovered a lockbox in her closet that only added to his confusion surrounding her past. It seemed as if Lori previously went by the name Becky Sue Turner. But Becky Sue Turner was the name of a girl who had died in a house fire back in 1971. So Ruff was left in kind of utter shock, confusion. Who was this woman he'd married back in 2003? Investigators were on the case, and as it turned out, Becky wasn't her only other name. Lori was actually born as Kimberly McLean, who had gone missing in 1986. She had run away from home at 18 years old. The question still remains though, why did she leave home and how did she acquire the birth certificate of a girl who died in 1971. At number 2, we have the Marfa Lights. The mystery surrounding the Texas Marfa Lights has fascinated locals and visitors alike for decades. Nestled in the remote desert landscape near the town of Marfa, these unexplained phenomena manifest as strange floating orbs of light that appear in the night sky. Witnesses have described them as glowing orbs of various colors ranging from white, yellow to blue and red. Lights often dance and dart and hover in the distance, defying all conventional explanations. Numerous theories have been proposed, of course, to explain the origin of these lights, but none of them have actually been able to fully unravel it. Some speculate that they are the result of natural occurrences like atmospheric gases or reflections from distant headlights. Others attribute them, of course, to supernatural or extraterrestrial origin, believing that they are the work of ghosts or alien visitations. Skeptics argue that the lights are simply the, product of illusions or, misinterpretations. But there's quite the allure behind it, and it's led to the establishment of viewing areas and research centers dedicated to studying and observing them. Scientists, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious visitors flock to the region in search of answers. That's something I'd like to see. I might have to take a trip to Texas, find some treasure, see some cool lights. It'll be a good time. And finally, we have the Loveland UFO case. This case stands as one of the most compelling incidents in the history of unidentified flying objects, and unfolded on the night of November 2nd, 1957 in Loveland, Texas, when the multiple witnesses reported encountering a series of bizarre events involving unidentified flying aircraft or aircrafts. Throughout the night, several motorists reported their vehicles stalling and electrical systems failing as they observed a large, almost egg-shaped object hovering in the vicinity. The witnesses described the craft emanating a blinding light and this intense heat. The accounts of the Loveland UFO sightings were remarkably consistent too, with witnesses from different locations reporting similar experiences. Law enforcement officers and local authorities were flooded with these reports throughout the night, which really adds to the credibility of the events. However, when law enforcement officers did arrive on these scenes, the crafts had already disappeared. This case attracted the attention of the United States Air Force, leading to an investigation by Project Blue Book, the official US government program tasked with studying UFO reports. Despite their efforts though, no definitive explanation was ever provided. Skeptics have offered theories ranging from, again, atmospheric phenomena to maybe electrical disturbances, but others believe this is genuine extraterrestrial encounter. But others still believe it's aliens, which I also like that idea a lot more. There's just this consistency and the number of witnesses, which again, very interesting.
Number 10, Summit Elementary School. This place is legendary for having the worst child art ever. It's said that the art made by the kids here is so awful that if you put it on your fridge will break down and you'll have to spend thousands of dollars on a new fridge. No, I'm just kidding, that's not the actual urban legend. It's way worse than that. The Summit Elementary School is an abandoned school and is one of the most haunted places in Texas. Nobody dares venture near it, except for those ghost hunter guys with goatees. There's a bunch of creepy stories tied to this place. It's said to be a very common stop for people who would commit racist murders against black people. In Texas? No way. Another part of the legend is that there's bodies of dead prostitutes stuffed into the walls. I would imagine that's terrible for the air quality. And on top of all this, there was a janitor who used to work there who would apparently throw kids in the boiler. There was a straight up Freddy Krueger at this school. But apparently they had a great Spanish program. Number 9, the Fanged Baby. Dude, this sounds like an opening to an X-Men movie. He had fangs, could crawl up walls, and do sick flips and stuff. I mean, I would want this kid. He would have a dope Instagram account of him doing a bunch of cool feral stuff, like hunting rabbits and seeing in the dark, and then he would be on Ellen. It would be like little Hank Williams times 1,000. Unfortunately, this urban legend doesn't end with you walking onto the stage of a talk show. This one follows a group of guys who were driving home from a camping trip when they saw something jump into the road. They swerved and missed it, but a few people in the car could have sworn that it was a little baby with fangs and blood all over its mouth. One of the guys was a little too curious and went back the next day to check it out. When he got to the spot, one of his tires blew, so he had to change it. After changing it, he was pretty exhausted by the whole ordeal, so he decided to take a nap in his truck. He woke up with a fanged toddler sitting in his lap. It then bit him in the neck and took off out the window. That dude should probably get that bite checked out. Nobody wants baby rabies. Number 8, Theater Center. This would make horror movies so much better. I imagine you get to watch a movie about ghosts in a place that's actually haunted by ghosts. Amazing. The Theater Center is apparently haunted by the ghost of an usher. The usher was killed in the theater by a jealous boyfriend when he was stabbed. On the bright side, this would mean you would get free movies for eternity. I mean, there's way worse places you could die. Imagine if you died in a paint store and then you had to haunt this place for the rest of time. The most exciting part of your day would be when they bring in the new fall colors. Wow, there's 11 shades of brown. Exciting. Number 7, Civil War Ghost. I guess the benefits of being a ghost after a war is you get to see how everything happened. You're either like, I can't believe what the world has come to, or you're like, man, I was really the bad guy this whole time. Over on the Thompson Island Bridge in San Marcos, Texas, a Civil War ghost is taken post and he will never leave. The backstory on this ghoulie is he pops up whenever a war is happening. So for America, that means this guy's working overtime. Also, it's said he can't leave because he made a promise to his brother that he'll make it home alive no matter what. I think it's time this guy took an L and just moved on to the afterlife. Next, we got Sarah Jane. We gotta go all the way back to the American Civil War. Sarah Jane was the wife of one of the soldiers fighting for the Confederates in the Civil War. One night she was in her home, she saw enemy soldiers approaching and she panicked. She had a baby in the home and she was worried that the men would kill her and her baby. So she snatched up the baby, put it in a wicker basket. She then rushed down to the river and hid her baby right next to the river. Then she returned home. She thought they wouldn't kill the baby if they found it alone. However, when she came back home, the soldiers were gone. So she returned to the river to find her baby, but the baby was also gone. The tide in the river had risen and swept the baby away. In a panic, she looked everywhere for her baby, running up to strangers, asking if anyone had seen her baby. Eventually, it was clear that her child was gone. So she walked down to the bridge next to the river and hung herself from the bridge. It said if you return there, you can hear a baby crying and Sarah Jane frantically looking for her baby. Ooh. Number 5, Marfa Lights. We're jetting over to the little town of Marfa, Texas. In this little old country town, there's some pretty weird happenings appearing right in the sky. The Marfa Lights are these balls of light that appear out of nowhere, like someone floating in midair is lighting off an M80. There has been so much speculation on what it could be. Some people think it's spirits floating around doing a little dance for the people watching. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you don't want attention. Other people think that it could be aliens. They think that they travel between this spot in Marfa and wherever these aliens have come from. They can use this spot to take samples of the earth, like a little school trip. But scientists have said that it's just balls of gas lighting up in the air. Boring scientists always ruining our fun. But hey, there's still hope that they're just trying to cover up some actual alien activity. Number 4. The haunted lighthouse of Boulevard Peninsula. Do we still need lighthouses for anything other than being giant creepy buildings and being the best place for seagulls to meet and poop? I know nothing about sea travel, so these might actually still be very important. But the lighthouse is more than just a seabird truck stop. It's haunted. The story behind this tale is the lighthouse used to be manned by a husband and wife with the help of their teenage son. One day, maybe from too much sun or having to eat fish for dinner one too many times, the kid snapped and killed both his parents and then committed suicide. Now the spirit of the crazed teen haunts the halls or stairs or whatever a lighthouse has. The backstory on this is kinda loose. Some people swear it to be true, while others say it's just a tale made up by some kids who are stuck in a small town. The only way to find out would be to go to the lighthouse with some Monster Energy and a copy of Call of Duty and see if you can draw out the teen's spirit. Number 3. Camp Lulu Sam's. Camp's great, guys. You make a bunch of friends, you do a bunch of arts and crafts, and occasionally one of the camp counselors will go crazy and murder everyone. Yay! Who needs sunscreen? The legend behind Camp Lulu Sam's is it was an all-girls camp, and one night one of the counselors lost their mind and killed a bunch of the people at the camp. It says you can still hear the screams of children when you're on the property at night. However, if you check the history books, there's nothing about a mass murder at the camp. So this might have been made up to spook some of the kids who come to stay there. Number 2. Bigfoot. Yes, I know Bigfoot was originally spotted in North Carolina, but there have been many sightings of the possible missing link in the Lone Star State. I mean, if you're a Bigfoot, I can't imagine you believe in borders. You just kind of go anywhere you please whenever you want and try to not get shot and make sure you're always out of focus. Although I do think that Texas would be one of the worst places for a Bigfoot to travel. They're covered in hair and Texas is almost always hot. There's cowboys and trackers all over the place who would probably love to hunt you down, and there's so many guns. I would definitely put Bigfoot on the list of things that are totally fine to shoot on sight. But the old ape man is really popular in Texas. There's even a group in Beeville called the Bee County Bigfoot Research Group that is dedicated to finding out the truth about Bigfoot. I wonder if they get paid for that, if they just do it out of the goodness of their hearts. Number 1. Ghost kids give you a hand. If you're ever in South San Antonio, don't park on any railroad tracks unless you want some unexpected help. This one is a pretty horrible sight. It of course takes place in San Antonio back in the 1930s when a bus full of school kids got stuck on some railroad tracks. There was an incoming train that tried to stop in time but couldn't and slammed through the bus. Many of the kids were injured and 10 were left dead. These kids now haunt the area. If you make the strange choice to park on the railroad tracks, they will push your car off the tracks, preventing anyone from meeting the grisly fate that they did. You can even put baby powder on your bumper to see the little handprints. So creepy, but also the most helpful ghosts of all time. I would wonder if you got a flat tire if they would help you change it. I hope when I'm a ghost I'm this generous.
Starting us off at number 10 is a creepy cemetery. A drone video that was posted by the TikTok user Haunted by the Darkness starts off exploring a creepy cemetery in the middle of the night. And I mean, what could go wrong there? The camera starts panning the headstone-filled grounds, but at first nothing seems to be really out of the ordinary. In fact, for most of the video, it's actually just the drone panning over the cemetery and showing the old graves, which, to be fair, is creepy all by itself. However, near the end of the video, things get weird. There is this kind of shadow figure that appears to be crouched over, and then it suddenly bolts off into the distance. It's a bit blurry, so it's pretty hard to tell if it's a person or what, but it definitely has made some people online a little uneasy, with some claiming it's a ghost and others fearing it could be some kind of occult practicing witch. Now, creepiness of the video aside, I do have some questions. If it was a drone filming this, why not chase whatever that was? I mean, that part is a little suspicious to me, that's all I'm saying. But it's definitely still a creepy video and has definitely cemented my stance on never visiting a cemetery after dark. Coming in at number 9, killer clowns. So one thing about me is I hate clowns. I always have. They just creep me out, plain and simple. So for me, one of the creepiest things I could think of would be coming across a clown wandering the street late at night. I mean, maybe I'm just scarred from the time when people were dressed as clowns running around on rampant sprees in the middle of the night, but I would also guess I'm not alone in this fear. Well, 2 friends came across exactly that one night while driving home in El Paso, Texas. They claimed they were filming to begin with because they were freestyling in the car, but then out of nowhere, the driver sees a clown standing on the side side of the road. The camera gets a little shaky, and you can hear the passenger not believing his friend when he claims to have seen this creepy clown. But then the camera gets back on the road, and after turning up the headlights, there it is standing in the middle of the road. A creepy clown dressed in all black with a white mask on. If that were not alarming enough, the clown then starts running towards the car, but from there the camera gets super shaky again and abruptly ends, so we don't know what happens next. I will be honest, I have no idea if this is real or not. Some say it is, but others claim it's a hoax. I mean, you know, people have dressed up as clowns and stood in the middle of the road waiting to attack people? Sure, but this one in particular, the jury is out. One thing I do know though, is that I still hate clowns. Coming in at number 8, a late night drive. This next video was posted on TikTok, and the user started off by explaining that it was getting late and they wanted to get home quickly, so they decided to take an alternate route home that was suggested to them by Google Maps. I mean, you would think that would be completely harmless, and probably in most cases it would be, but this video is definitely making some people stressed, and I don't blame them. The user claims they started recording the video as they had just passed a huge group of deer, but then continued recording as things started to get shifty when a van that was passing them on the other side of the road apparently slowed down, turned around, and started following our TikTok friend. Then, as they show in the video, the user begins to slow down because they see something strange on the side of the road and they're trying to figure out what it is. As they approach the object, they begin to panic as the van behind them is getting closer and closer. And I mean, while we don't know for sure what that thing is that's on the side of the road, it doesn't really look like a legal situation. Then lastly, the user speeds away and the video ends, so we don't really know what happened after that. Online, lots of people are saying it could be a dead body, but others were claiming this is apparently some kind of kidnapping technique that people use to try and get people out of their cars. I mean, who knows? We have no idea what it was. Let's just hope it's not as bad as it seems. Coming in at number 7 are playing ghosts. In Seguin, Texas lies the terrifyingly haunted Magnolia Hotel. Now, if you are a Most Amazing fan, then I'm sure you are not surprised that there is some creepy footage from a hotel, because, well, hotels may as well be breeding grounds for spirits considering how many haunted hotels are alive and well in North America. This particular video was posted by the owners of the hotel, and they claim that it's footage of 2 ghosts in the room playing with a toy they purchased for them. It starts off with some kind of flashing light on the floor going berserk, followed by a sort of ball thing that begins rolling around the room, seemingly all on its own. I mean, I don't know many other explanations other than maybe the wind that could explain away something like that, but from what I can tell, doesn't look like the wind is moving it. Now, the curtains are closed, so we can't see if the window is open, but even so, wouldn't the curtains move if the wind was blowing past them? Let's just hope that whatever it is that's inside that hotel room is a benevolent entity, because otherwise this hotel could be in for some serious trouble. Next up at number 6, a mysterious creature. Posted to YouTube in June of 2022, this video was not just creepy and inexplicable to the general public, it even became a news story across the entire country. Apparently, this strange creature that is being called Wolfman was caught on camera walking around the Amarillo Zoo in Texas, and no one can figure out what the heck it is. According to city officials, it is real and not doctored footage, but that kind of just makes it even more concerning. It doesn't appear to be any kind of animal we are familiar with, and it's certainly not a human either, at least no one thinks so at this point. This UAO, or unidentified Amarillo object as it's being called, has people up in arms, with some saying it's a chupacabra, the absolutely horrific folklore creature that's said to live in the southern United States and attack and devour livestock, but that's not the only theory circulating the internet. There are conspiracy theories that it's an evil alien coming to Earth, that it's a skinwalker, or that it's even some kind of Sasquatch. But honestly, I just hope that whatever it is, it comes in peace. Coming in at number 5, a vortex ghost. It's not just creepy ghosts playing with toys you can find at the horrifically haunted Magnolia Hotel. There is apparently a whole slew of ghosts who have been caught on camera, each as terrifying as the last. This particular video came about while conducting a public investigation of the hotel back in 2017, and it is definitely unlike anything I have ever seen. The first sign that there is something in the room is when a small puff of black mist appears in the bottom left corner. Then again, the same mist of black appears this time, morphing into what can only be described as a white, almost vortex that sweeps up in front of the camera lens. Next, a small orb of light zips up and away, and another vortex follows it. And this white mist continues to circulate the room for a while until it's suddenly gone. Some commenters have said it looks like it could even be two entities hugging, while others claim that it's more likely a frustrated ghost zipping around the room looking for something, or maybe even someone. Now, could this really be proof of a ghost? I mean, maybe? What else really could it be? There is no one else in the room from what we can tell, and it matches a lot of descriptions of what investigators claim entities look like, not to mention the reputation of this hotel is an extremely haunted one. Like always, if it is a ghost, let's just hope it's not an evil demon coming to wreak havoc. Coming in at number 4, a UFO. This next video was posted to TikTok last year after a woman behind the camera noticed a strange flickering light appear in the sky. She starts off explaining that she is standing at her window by her house and clarifies that there is no way it could be any kind of glare when she adjusts the camera down, proving that the house lights are pointing down. But things get extra creepy when the camera pans back up in front of her and it appears that the flickering light is not only up in the sky, but on the ground in front of her a few dozen feet away. From there, it's a lot of zooming in and out on the suspect UFO in the sky until all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it appears like it begins moving around in the sky until suddenly, without a trace, it disappears into the night. What's especially wild about this is, according to the text on the video, this is the second night in a row this orb of light has appeared near her house in the sky. Which, if all of this turns out to be true, do they know she is watching them? As you can imagine, people online wasted no time confirming her suspicions that it was in fact an alien spaceship. However, there are a few pointing out that it could have merely been a street lamp. That being said, she took a video the following day showing the grounds where she lives, and at least from what she is showing us, there is no street lamp anywhere close to where the alleged UFO was the night before. What do you think? Could it really be an alien spaceship in the sky? Coming in at number 3, a stairwell entity. Once again, another hotel makes it on the list. This one, however, is said to be an extended stay hotel in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, we all know there is a lot of paranormal footage out there, but how much of it comes from hotel security cameras? While this video is short, that doesn't make it any less alarming. The video is split into 2 frames, the one on the left showing an orb of light near the wall, which, as far as paranormal sightings go, is pretty much the calling card for a ghostly entity being around. That being said, if that was all it was, it could easily be explained away as an actual light. It's the right frame of the video where things get especially unsettling. When, in what seems to be the bottom of a stairwell inside the hotel, an inexplicable white smoky blur is caught traveling across the room before seemingly disappearing through a wall. Not only that, but it kind of looks as though it's walking on legs, which is wild. People all over were straight up terrified as to what or who this entity could be, and if it's dangerous or not. But so far, no such sighting has come up since. For everyone's peace of mind, let's just hope it was a spirit simply passing through. Coming in at our number 2 spot, another UFO. One night while out walking, 2 friends came across a strange sight in the sky in Austin, Texas. One of them started filming when he noticed that there were 5 distinct bright lights that appeared to all be connected. They ended up sending the video into Fox 7 News and explaining that while they didn't consider themselves believers of alien life before that night, this encounter was making them second guess that belief. Plus, a witness of the alleged UFO sighting in a different part of town claimed it was completely silent, which she thought was extremely odd and immediately made her think it was some kind of alien spaceship. The craziest part of the whole video, however, is when the 5 lights literally zoom away into the distance at an incredibly high speed. I mean, I can safely say I have never seen anything like this in my entire life. It looks like it's out of Star Wars or something. And if it were me, I would definitely be questioning what I just saw. Now, there have been some skeptics claiming this could be some kind of drone light show, which, I mean, could be true. The drone expert they got for the Fox 7 interview certainly seems to think it must have been a drone, but a lot of other commenters who claim to be experts have also made it very clear that a speed like the one seen in the video is not a technology that is yet available to any drone we have here on Earth. I mean, look, I don't know enough about drones to know how fast they can or can't go, but to me, that video is extremely suspicious. And last up in our #1 spot, an alien abduction. There are a lot of scary things that could happen to you in this world, but maybe one of the most terrifying things I can imagine would be being abducted by aliens. And this video found from a doorbell security camera from a property in Porter, Texas, just might be living proof of my fear. The video is quick, simply showing a man leaving his house at night, but as he is walking away, the video briefly glitches and pauses. Next thing you know, there is a spark of light that shoots up into the air from exactly where he was standing, and the man is gone without a trace. Once this video got out there, conspiracy theorists pretty much fell into one of two beliefs. Either the man was abducted by aliens, or that he himself is an alien. Now, I will admit, both of these are a little far-fetched. Realistically, this could just be a weird camera glitch, but I mean, it's definitely some strange footage with little to no explanation. So, I mean, technically, the possibilities of what could be happening are still up for debate.
Number 10. Driskill Hotel, Austin. While there are many reportedly haunted hotels in Texas, this one seems to top many lists for the most ghostly activity. Most of this seems to stem from the very chilling stories of room 525. In the 1880s, there was a young couple that was having their wedding at the hotel, or at least that was the plan. The groom got cold feet and left the bride at the altar. Now, heartbroken, she ran upstairs to their suite, room 525, and took her own life. And it said she still walks the halls in her long white gown. But that isn't the end of the story, because in 1991, another bride was spurned at the altar, and after going on a shopping spree with the groom's stolen credit card, she too returned to room 525 and took her own life. Since then, guests have seen her carrying a pistol and walking into the room, all without ever opening the door. So don't stay in room 525 or you may never check out. There's also an eerie painting that's said to be inhabited by the spirit of a young girl, the daughter of a senator, whose expression seems to change on its own. People who view the painting have said that they feel like they were floating off of the ground, though they remained on the floor. They also say that their equilibrium and balance was off for a few hours after looking at her. Number 9. USS Lexington, Corpus Christi. Now before I tell you about this spooky ship, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can catch all of our amazing videos. As a naval vessel that saw actual battle, there have been multiple lives that were lost on board, including that of an engine room operator who still roams the ship at night waiting for the battle to end. The crew of the ship have often reported flickering lights and doors slamming on their own, which, given that this is a very well-maintained historical site, you'd think that they would have found the cause by now. Maybe it's just the ghosts of sailors lost to time. Coming in at number 8, we have the Marfa Lights in, you guessed it, the town of Marfa. While there is so much beauty in the area and plenty of non-spooky reasons to visit, the main tourist attraction to this quaint little town are floating, sourceless lights that seem to change color and even move in the night sky. Many visitors make the journey at all times of year to see the lights, and there's even a yearly festival made in their honor. Reported since 1883 by people of all ages and professions, no one knows what these floating orbs are. They appear at random, but usually in the same area of the sky, and since there's so much open space and low light pollution, it's perfect for stargazing, or seeing spooky orbs, I guess. Some say that these lights are UFOs, some say spirits, and others think that they're just headlights. All that I know is that if I see a mysterious floating orb, I'm going the other way. Number 7. Woman Hollering Creek, San Antonio. Said to be the home of La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman, this creepy creek leaves anyone who visits with a sense of dread. As the story goes, La Llorona was a woman who was distraught that her once doting, affectionate husband left her for another woman. And after confronting him and leaving the confrontation with cuts and bruises, she waded into the water, dressed in her best clothes, and drowned herself in the creek. right after doing the same to the rest of her family. Her chilling screams for her children can be heard all the way from the highway, giving her and the creek its very apt name. Many people have felt themselves being drawn towards the water by ghostly voices, and some have even been tugged towards the bank of the creek. Perhaps it's La Llorona looking for her next victim. The screams heard and feelings of being pulled into the water have mostly been reported by younger people, making this all the more terrifying given what La Llorona did. Number 6. El Paso High School. Now, when you're thinking of haunted places, a school isn't exactly the first place that comes to mind, but this one has quite a story. In 1985, the graduating class received their yearbooks, and when basking in the nostalgia of their group photo, they noticed something odd. A woman who no one could identify was in the picture with them. Now, obviously, that would be quite concerning. I know I'd be freaked out if there was someone I'd never seen before standing next to me in a picture. The blurry apparition still has not been identified to this day, but some think it's a student who fell from a window years before who never got to graduate. I say give her the diploma. She's already in the yearbook. Sticking in El Paso, in our number 5 spot is the Plaza Theater Performing Arts Center. As someone who loves the theater, I try to see as many shows as I can, but I think I'll skip visiting this theater, no matter how good the production is. Built in 1930 as a movie house, demolished for a parking lot in the late 80s, and rebuilt as a live theater space, this building has seen many changes, but some things have stayed constant throughout its history. Many workers of the building have reported seeing a man in one of the box seats, in a tuxedo, smoking a cigarette. One crew member recalls seeing him after turning on the stage lights, sitting alone in the box, as though he'd been there for hours already before the lights came on. And when she saw the smoking man, he turned to her and said, "We all have our time to die," and then threw himself headfirst over the balcony, vanishing before he could hit the ground. A former vice president of the theater also recalls seeing a ghostly girl bouncing a ball in the aisles of the theater and always staring. He also noticed that there was a rag doll that seemed to appear and disappear on its own, moving to locations that it couldn't have without someone's help. Even locked doors didn't seem to stop it from appearing in the projection booth. Number 4. Yorktown Memorial Hospital. Established in 1951, this abandoned hospital has been named one of the most haunted places in America. And since over 2,000 patients are said to have died within its walls before it shuttered its doors in 1992, I can see why. Reports of apparitions of people in hospital gowns running through the corridors or hiding in rooms are numerous, along with moving wheelchairs, disembodied voices, and footsteps. But there are some who have even more chilling stories. While exploring the halls and rooms that have remained largely untouched since its closure, some ghost hunters have been touched, had their clothes tugged on, or even pushed to the ground while being given a ghostly warning. Some of the spirits are believed to be that of patients who had illegal medical experiments performed on them and lost their lives in the process, making for a very vengeful ghost. Number 3. The Screaming Bridge in Arlington. On the night of February 4th, 1961, 6 from the local high school were taking a drive after seeing a movie earlier in the evening. While driving down Bedford Road toward the rail crossing bridge, which had mysteriously been burned down a few years previous, only rebuilt earlier that year, they were startled by another car reversing and honking its horn wildly. This caused the driver to speed up out of fear, and not realizing that the bridge was out, the car careened over the edge and crashed into the other side of the ravine. Unfortunately, 3 of them lost their lives that night, and their screams of terror can still be heard by anyone traveling the renamed Greenbelt Road. The saddest part of this story is that the car that startled them was being driven by a man who had just barely avoided going over the edge of the broken bridge himself, and he was reversing and honking to warn them of the danger ahead. The entire area, now known as Death Crossing, is now blocked off and no traffic travels through. At number 2 on our list, we have La Carafe in Houston. This historic bar, built originally as a bakery in 1860, has been serving patrons for decades, but many come not only for the drinks, but for a paranormal experience. Bartenders and visitors alike have seen apparitions of a hulking man walking upstairs and hearing his giant footsteps pacing the floor. No one knows who this may be, but some say he died there from some nefarious means. The former manager of the bar can also be seen staring out of the top floor window, looking over his patrons and ensuring they're having a good time. And he seems a bit more friendly. However, there are some that report the sounds of a body being dragged across the floor above, but when the sound is followed, nothing's there. Makes you wonder what happened upstairs. And since it's one of the oldest buildings in the city that's been in continuous use, it's become a tourist hotspot and a historical site. Personally, I won't be stopping in for a drink anytime soon, no matter how good the cocktails are. And finally, number 1, the Alamo. While students are taught to remember the Alamo, they don't really teach about all of the spirits who can never forget. In the infamous battle, thousands of soldiers lost their lives, and many were dumped into mass graves and others left to rot out in the sun, so it makes sense that you'd have some pissed off ghosts wandering the ground. There have been countless reports of soldier apparitions walking with weapons in hand, taking their usual patrol, and even full platoons screaming and charging into battle. Even in the afterlife they couldn't get away from war, and so they continue to fight their invisible enemy. There are also accounts of a small blonde-haired boy hiding in multiple places where the gift shop now stands, so make sure to pick up your haunted keychains. While the buildings are beautiful to look at and the area is interesting to explore, the history can leave one with a haunting feeling, and with all those spirits around, I'd be careful touring here, especially at night.
Alright, coming in at number 10 we have Lechuza. Ooh, I love a good owl, but this one is not your average mouse catcher. Lechuza is a shape-shifting witch who flies through the night hunting for prey. While in flight, she may look like an owl. When a Lechuza is stopped, they have bird bodies and human faces, so basically a lot like a harpy. The women seem to be hybrid monsters, as in their human lives they were said to have sold their soul to the devil, who gave them intense magical powers in exchange for their souls. How do you know you're in the presence of a Lechuza? Well, they'll let you know by a series of whistling and baby noises. Those who try and investigate what the noises are will likely become dinner for the owly she-witches. Not great. Coming in at number 9 we have the Chupacabra. Ah, the legend of the Chupacabra. This one isn't constricted to Texas alone. The Chupacabra story first sprang up in Puerto Rico. It is said to be a blood-sucking monster from the deep that attacks animals and drinks the blood of livestock, especially goats, which is why the creature's name translates to goat sucker in Spanish. Anyway, in Texas, reports of the Chupacabra were rife in the year 2007 when a woman named Phyllis Canyon reported seeing one of the blood-sucking monsters at her ranch in South Texas. She also reportedly found a number of chickens with their throats torn open. This sparked a whole Chupacabra panic, and the legend of the beast was firmly consolidated in the Lone Star state law. Coming into number 8 we have the Chinese cemetery. There is a strange urban legend surrounding a 7-foot-tall ghost and her lover at the Lona China Cemetery in Texas. This isn't just your classic ghost haunting in a graveyard, except actually I guess it is, only there's a freakishly tall ghost. The story goes that a man wanted to run away with his lover of Chinese descent, but he was forbade by his great-grandfather who owned the cemetery. The issue here was an issue of race. The man was Anglo-Hispanic, but his granddie didn't want him mixing. I bet that old racist isn't pleased that the cemetery is now called the Chinese Cemetery. Hey. Anyway, both the ghost of the tall woman and the man are said to roam the cemetery at night looking for one another, but sadly they never quite meet, which is pretty depressing. Apparently the female has been known to reach out and touch you, thinking that you might be the lost love. Sends shivers up my spine. Ooh. Coming in at number 7 we have the legend of Midget Mansion. Not the most politically correct name, but it seems that Midget Mansion is the name this urban legend is best known by in San Antonio. It seems that the house in question is a mansion with low-hanging fixtures and ceilings custom built for a family of small people. A husband and a wife and their normal-sized children took up residence in this home. The father was said to be a respected businessman in the 1920s and was well liked in the community, who found him to be a novel addition. It seems sadly the man went mad one day and murdered his entire family. Well, with the murders and the odd size of the home, nobody really wanted to buy it, so it fell into disrepair. It seems that the ghostly sounds emanating from the building and strange shadows lurked for many years. A lot of people who went to the abandoned house felt a malicious presence. From my research, it seems that the old house has finally been pulled down in favour of condos. However, the ghostly presence, the trauma of the family left behind, is apparently still rife in folklore. Coming into number 6 we have El Cucuy. Am I saying this right, Texas? Let me know, because I'm just a humble British gal who has no idea really. So these urban legends come around so much, I honestly feel like in every country and within that a lot of provinces and states have their own version. El Cucuy is a Texan bogeyman, but worse, apparently. Now the legend describes the beast as male, small, humanoid with glowing red eyes. Al-Kukui hides in closets and under beds and comes for naughty children in the night. While this does seem like your classic boogeyman stuff, it seems that there have been some reported sightings of Al-Kukui over the years. Now this leads me to think that actually, maybe there is something more to this urban legend after all. Coming into number 5, we have the Hitchhiker of White Rock. This legend comes from White Rock Lake in northeast Dallas, where reportedly a 20-year-old girl committed suicide in the lake in the 1930s. Nobody knows why she took her own life, although many suspect it was as a result of heartache. It's always heartache, isn't it? To this day, people report seeing a woman standing by the lake in a wet dress. She stops cars that drive by and ask for a ride. Now, if you refuse her, an accident will likely befall you, but if you say yes, she will vanish in the back of your car, leaving just a puddle. Coming into number 4, we have the South Texas Headless Horseman. During Halloween in San Patricio, you could enjoy a haunted hayride as you hear the ghostly legends of the Headless Horseman. It seems that in the 1800s, a wealthy man from Kentucky came to Texas to make his fortune. He was buying up land and his last stop was the town of San Patricio. Unfortunately for him, his wagon was looted and he lost both his gold and his head to thieves. To this day, his headless body is said to ride the stretch from Matthias to San Patricio. Coming into number 3, we have Demon's Road. It just isn't an urban legend video without a spooky haunted road, is it? No. It's not. In Huntsville, Texas, there is a stretch of road called Bowden Road, although locals will tell you that it's called Demon's Road. Why? Well, because of the demonic things that have reportedly happened along it. Oh, and there's a cemetery at the end of the road, which doesn't really help matters. A whole bunch of Huntsville residents have had weird experiences along the road or seen strange things, but this isn't just your average haunted road. It seems that oftentimes spectres will follow people home. One popular story associated with Demon's Road is that a woman was visiting the cemetery at the end of the road when she saw a man lurking. Now, the man was acting a bit weirdly, he was pacing up and down, but she didn't pay him much attention. After that, as she was journeying home, she thought she saw the same man walking on the road, but once again, she just ignored it. When she got home, however, she thought she saw the same man staring at her from her bathroom mirror while she was in the shower. She screamed, he disappeared, and she never saw him again. Creepy. Coming into number 2, we have the Killer Nurse Ghost. Deep within the halls of Bexar County Hospital, still a fully functioning hospital in San Antonio, Texas, there is said to be a malicious spirit who kills patients at night. I had no idea that ghosts could actually kill, and I'm not happy about this turn of events. The legend goes that the nurse wanders the halls at night and kills patients in their room in consecutive room number order. Patients who were seemingly getting better would simply drop down dead, but before they died, they would report speaking to a particular nurse, although none of the ward staff knew who that was. When CCTV footage was checked, it seems that all the patients who died were seen to be talking to thin air. It is likely that this urban legend is inspired by the real-life killer nurse, Janine Jones, a serial killer nurse at the Bexar County Hospital, who did actually use lethal drug cocktails to murder 60 children. Finally, coming into number 1, we have La Lorna. Part banshee, part horse, La Lorna is a famous female spirit that haunts El Paso. She roams the banks of Rio Grande, causing havoc. It is said that she killed herself and her children down by the river because she was jilted by her ex-lover, who didn't want to marry her because he simply couldn't accept her kids. What a nasty man. Heartbroken and crazed, obviously killing your kids and yourself would be an emotional ordeal, and it seems that that emotion has carried on through into the afterlife. She's now heard wailing by the river. When she has been spotted, she is seen with the head of a horse and the body of a human. What's going on there? Honestly, I don't know. In the area, people are warned from going down to the river late at night, as La Lorna will force you to keep her company, whatever that means. In 2019, New Line Cinema are set to release a Hollywood adaptation of this called The Curse of La Lorna, so that's pretty exciting. A Hollywood movie made out of Texas urban legends. Great! Coming into number 10, we have the legend of the black-eyed children. Forget the black-eyed peas, meet the black-eyed children. I've said it before, I'll say it again, children ghosts creep me out. They're They're the worst kinds of ghosts. Kids are creepy, end of really, but kid ghosts! Apparently there are some kind of creepy black-eyed children stalking the streets of Abilene in Texas. The story comes from a local journalist, Brian Bethel, who said that in 1996 he was in the parking lot of a movie theater when he popped on his inner car light to write a check. 96 and checks. See, this wouldn't happen now. 2 words. E-transfer. Wait, is that 1 word? Either way, I absolutely knew that archaic banking was a road to evil. Back to the story. Noticing the light in his car, 2 kids came up to his window, which he rolled down to see what they wanted. Now the kids looked between 9 and 12 years old, and they asked him for a ride. He said they had a very uneasy feeling about them, and after a while he noticed that their eyes were totally black. He wound up his window and got the heck out of there, but his story was enough to go down in Abilene legend. Coming in at number 9, we have the Candy Lady. Who loves candy? I love candy. Get me a dip and dab and a strawberry lace. Although we have to say the Candy Lady of Texas is enough to make me give up caramels for life, which is a shame because caramel's such a dream. So the Candy Lady is said to have been a woman called Clara Crane. She lived in Texas around the turn of the 20th century. She was said to have been married to an older man, and the pair had a child called Marcella. Sadly, Marcella was killed in a freak accident, and Clara blamed her husband and then went mad, reportedly killing him with poisoned caramel. She was then taken to North Texas Lunatic Asylum but released a few years later. This is when Candy started showing up on windowsills, luring in kids. Later, a number of kids across the state went missing, and one farmer was said to have found rotten children's teeth in a caramel wrapper on his land. The urban legend goes that the Candy Lady will start by leaving a kid candy to win their trust. Then she'll abduct them and stab them with a fork. I shouldn't laugh, but forks are kind of like the comedy side of utensils, right? From Candy Lady to Donkey Lady at number 8. Donkey Lady, now I've heard it all. Apparently ye olde Donkey Lady haunts a bridge over Elm Creek in San Antonio, Texas. The origin story of the ghost dates back almost 200 years to the mid-1800s. When settlers were living on the banks of Elm Creek, a husband and wife had a small wooden farmhouse and were making a living with a small number of livestock. One day, one of their donkeys or mules was grazing in the area when a young man from the town came across it. This man was not a nice man, but he was a wealthy man. He was the son of an important town leader. The young man teased the donkey and hit it with a stick, to which the donkey fairly responded by biting him. I'd bite someone if they hit me with a stick too. Retaliating, the man started heavily beating the donkey. Hearing their mule being attacked, the couple emerged and told the man to get away, throwing rocks at him for hurting their valuable animal. The man had a bit of Prince Joffrey entitlement moment, and he screamed that his father would hear about this, and to be honest, hear about it he did. He brought a bunch of friends to the farmhouse to torch the place. When the husband intervened, he was shot, as were his sons. The wife's dress caught fire and she helplessly watched her loved ones die. As she was engulfed in flames, she screamed running down the road. She began to burn as she threw herself into the creek. Her body was never found, but her wails are said to still be heard along the stretch of the road. If a car stops for too long, it is said that she appears screaming with her arms outstretched on the bridge. Some even report a body falling on the bonnet of the car, but when they stop, there's nothing there. Coming into number 7, we have Arlington's Screaming Bridge / Hell's Gate. According to many Texans, going down the Arlington Screaming Bridge and listening out for the shrieks of the dead is some kind of local rite of passage. On a winter's night in 1961, a car full of 6 Arlington teenage girls fell off a burned out wooden bridge and onto the rail tracks next to a creek. This creek had a little bridge over it that's still there today. Now the driver didn't realize that the bridge was out, drove over it, crashed. 3 of the girls died as a result of the impact, 1 suffered a brain injury and 2 others were injured. Those responsible for burning the bridge were 4 boys who went to the same high school as the girls, resulting in a big local scandal and tragedy. The bridge over the creek still stands, and people refer to it as the Screaming Bridge in memory of the girls who died. The spot near the bridge may also be cursed. In 1994, 2 people were killed in a truck when the driver tried to outrace a train at the crossing. Curse or just idiocy? I don't know. Coming into number 6, we have the White Lady of Rio Frio. So the Frio River is a beautiful spot near Rio Frio in Texas. On a summer's day, you may see picnickers hanging out by the water enjoying the weather, but some say they've had a far spookier experience. Many people that visit the Frio River have reported a strange white mist hovering over the water. Some say it's a strange microclimate, but others cite the story of the Lady of Frio. The story goes that back in the 1900s, a young girl called Maria Juarez was the prettiest girl in the canyon. She was young and had an elder sister whom she loved deeply. Her sister had children with a man called Gregorio, who unfortunately cared more about Maria than a sister-in-law. Maria helped raise her sister's children and dreamed that someday she would meet someone, marry them, and have kids of her very own. She thought all of her dreams had come true when she met Anselmo, a dashing young man who seemed to return her affections. Sadly, this angered Gregorio, who told Maria that he loved her and wanted to be with her. When she rebuffed him because of her sister and Anselmo, he shot her through the heart by the lake. Now, her spirit is said to haunt the spot to this day. Adding a level of legitimacy to the story, there is an unmarked grave in a Frio cemetery said to belong to Maria, the White Lady who died an unmarried virgin. Coming into number 5, we have El Muerto. The El Muerto tale is truly terrifying. Back during the gold rush era, people thought that there was gold to be found in Texas. On top of that, the USA-Mexico border was hotly contested around this area, with an area of no man's land between the two countries. In this area, bandits were rife and Texas Rangers were around to keep them in check. One ranger, William Bigfoot Wallace, wanted to teach the bandits a lesson after one persistent criminal, known simply as Vidal, stole a bunch of Mustang horses. When he was in court, Bigfoot Wallace and his ranger friends chopped off Vidal's head, sat his body on a horse, attached his hands to the reins, and strung his head to the saddle. This was supposed to teach other would-be bandits a lesson not to mess with the Texas Rangers. Some poor sod then had to deal with finding the horse and its deceased cargo, which would be absolutely awful. Despite eventually being taken down from the horse, legend has it that Vidal rides on through the Rio Grande area today, and his ghost is dubbed as El Muerto. Coming into number 4, we have the Dancing Devil of El Cameroncito. A dancing Texas urban legend. I am so down for this. Apparently the Dancing Devil is local only to El Cameroncito, so ladies of other towns, no worries if a man is asking you to dance, you're probably safe. Ladies in Cameroncito though, watch out. So basically a legend has it that in the 1970s, a man in a dapper suit would ask beautiful ladies to dance with him. While they didn't find him beautiful, they felt compelled to dance. As he danced, women would be swept up. One day, a woman noticed the man she was dancing with had hooves for feet and that everyone near them was staring in horror. Realizing she was dancing with the devil, she ran away. The devil, however, remained. Now I always keep my demons in my dancing shoes. Coming into number 3, we have Goatman. Goatman, 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 Goatman. Fun to say, fun to talk about. There are a couple of legends surrounding the Goatman of Old Alton Bridge in Denton County. The bridge is locally dubbed Goatman's Bridge, and some say that is because there is a goat-like demon that haunts the nearby forest. But others turn to a more elaborate tale of a local goat farmer. Oscar Washburn was a black goat farmer who was known for being an honest businessman, and he was a well-liked member of the community. Unfortunately, a successful black man caught the attention of the KKK, who was said to have abducted him in August 1938. Reportedly, they tied a noose around his neck and threw him over the Old Alton Bridge into the river below. When they went to bring up his body, they found that the noose was empty. Frustrated, the clan went to his house and slaughtered his wife and children. Washburn's body was never found, but a lot of paranormal enthusiasts will tell you that if you drive out over the bridge at night without your headlights on, the old goat man will be standing on the other side to greet you. Some also report being touched or grabbed by a spirit, and others say there are weird flashing lights in the nearby forest. Coming into number 2, we have the ghost of Fort Phantom Hill. Fort Phantom is one of the most well-preserved historic sites in Texas, with original architecture dating back to the mid-1850s. Fort Phantom was built as a safe stop for immigrants headed to the Californian gold fields. The story behind the name of Phantom Hill seems to be twofold. On the one hand, the fort is said to look really high up on a plateau from afar, but when you get close, it looks level, so it disappears like a phantom. The other story is that one night while a sentry was keeping watch, he fired on a Native American who was on the hill. When he went to go and investigate, he didn't find a body. When the team at the whole fort went out to look for a band of natives, they couldn't find any evidence of them ever being nearby. This ghost on the hill is said to re-emerge every now and then, confusing those who watch from the garrison. Finally, coming into number 1, we have one of the most well-known Texas urban legends ever. We have the Houston Batman. So first, I was like, Batman? Hell yes, get me there. But then I delved further into this legend and I realized that they don't mean like the superhero. No, no, no. The Houston Batman is also known as the Houston Horror and is a winged creature that has regularly been sighted in Houston, Texas. Now this creature is a bit like the Mothman of the Mothman prophecies, and I don't like like a big moth. The story of the winged menace dates back to 1953 when a woman and her neighbors were sitting on their porch in East 3rd Street, Houston. 23-year-old housewife Hilda Walker said she looked up over the lawn and saw the shadow of a huge moth. When she looked up, she saw something huge then fly into a pecan tree. Her and her neighbors thought that the monster was around 6.5 feet tall, although they weren't totally sure what they'd seen. 14-year-old Judy Mayer, who was also sat on the porch, screamed in fear as she got a square-on look at the monster. He was described as a man, but with wings, huge wings, and a weird strange yellow haze around him. Mrs. Walker reported the incident to the police and spoke to local news outlets. The Batman/Mothman may have been spotted once again by Houston Bel Air theatre workers in the 1990s, and the legend lives on today. Some suspect a government cover-up is at play, as vigilantes seeking the Batman discovered that some years after the initial incident, Mrs. Walker's neighborhood was razed to make way for a new part of the interstate.